The emperor fell in love with a subject's wife, and I am the imperial concubine he used to compensate and appease a powerful minister. What a disgusting wife-swapping move. The eunuch came to deliver the imperial decree, and under my veil, I twisted my mouth, suppressing a laugh. Oh my God! Who doesn't know that Prime Minister Pei is a man of impeccable character, dignified and observant of etiquette? And the Pei family even has a family rule of only marrying one wife. This Prime Minister's wife, her ancestral graves, must be spewing wolf smoke to willingly compete with so many for a moody, rotten turnip. Your ladyship, 10,000 blessings. Your servant is here by His Majesty's oral command to summon you to the main hall. Prime Minister Pei is newly widowed, and His Majesty, sympathizing with his subject, bestows your ladyship upon the Prime Minister. My eyes, visible outside the veil, flickered as I looked at this old eunuch, who bowed as he entered, and whose entire being exuded an air of fawning over the powerful and trampling on the lowly. It is coming, it is coming. This famous wife-swapping scene, the evening wind in the cold palace, isn't just for show. I shivered from the cold, cowering, as I lowered my head and followed the old eunuch. He glanced at me out of the corner of his eye with a hint of disdain, while under my veil, I was actually twisting my mouth, suppressing a laugh. I am not the owner of this body. This little concubine from the cold palace already ascended to heaven an hour ago. But because our names were the same and our appearances similar, the impermanence officers hooked the wrong soul. I don't know how a ghost could make such a big mistake at work. You know, I was live streaming at the time. Over 1,000 people were watching when I just dropped dead. Everyone also displayed that China Speeds, a one-stop service of rescue, sending to hospital, and cremation. When I threatened to sue them to the central underworld, those two underworld civil servants repeatedly promised they would help me return to life. However, this matter requires approval time at the underworld's administrative office, and they also need to help me reshape my body and reverse time, at the slowest, 2 years. So they lodged my soul in this body, whose natural lifespan was originally over, but hadn't been dealt with yet. As compensation, they also, in broadly speaking, this is a male-oriented power struggle novel. What is being plotted for is not only the empire but also a beauty. The tyrannical and cruel emperor, Yin Zong, forcibly seized Duan Wanyai, the wedded wife of the aloof and upright powerful minister, Pei Heian. Such undisguised humiliation and the cuckolding. Even Pei Heian, as pure and noble as he was, couldn't help but hold a grudge. So the empire and Duan Wanyai became the objects of contention for half a lifetime between these two powerful, distinguished, and majestic men. As for who succeeded in the end, those two ghosts didn't show me. They said I would only be staying for 2 years, and didn't need to know so much, lest I disrupt the destiny trajectory set by the heavenly Tao. Following that old eunuch, I entered a side hall. Gold bricks paved the floor, reflecting light like mirrors under the full room of candlelight, and golden dragons with bared fangs and brandished claws were inlaid on the golden Nanmu pillars. I secretly took a sharp breath. This is a side hall. No wonder they wanted to contend for the empire. Before going back, I wonder if you could accommodate me to pry off a little and take it with me, then put it in a lucky bag for a lottery to give back to my fan babies. Kneel. The eunuch's high-pitched voice rang in my ears, and feeling guilty, my legs went soft and I knelt down. Damn reflex, is she the Chu Karen you mentioned? Is she still wearing a veil even after seeing us? Tens of meters ahead, on a soft couch with dragon patterns, a young emperor in a dark dragon robe leaned casually, the faint scent of wine mixed with perfume wafting to my nose. Further inside, a woman's graceful figure, lying on her side, was faintly visible through a silk screen. Extravagant, decadent, and inconsistent with socialist core values. The eunuch quickly took out a scroll of painting and knelt before Yin Zong, slowly unrolling it. Reporting to your majesty, Karen Chu is ugly and plain. I fear she might stain your eyes. I secretly raised my eyes while they were looking at the painting. Never seen a living emperor. Curious, but the next moment, I met those cold, teasing phoenix eyes. And I shivered again. Shrinking into a ball, he sneered coldly. Ugly as she is, she does have a pair of good eyes. If it weren't for giving them to Prime Minister Pei, that important court official who works for the country and the people, I could gouge them out and admire them daily. I was so scared I closed my eyes, as if one more look and the knife would be right before me. Everyone in the palace is truly perverted. The emperor is a big pervert, and the others are a bunch of little perverts. If eyes are pretty, they should be gouged out and admire them daily. Do you have formaldehyde? The eunuch's high-pitched fawning voice once again echoed in the side hall. The words he spoke made one want to shove his severed member into his mouth that can't spit out ivory. If your majesty likes these eyes, you can certainly gouge them out. This servant will then go help your majesty find a woman to send to Prime Minister Pei. No, I'm afraid it would be difficult to find such an ugly woman in the harem again. After poking the eunuch, then poke it into your mouth. Plop, I sniffled my irritated nose, and a tear dropped directly from the corner of my eye onto the cold golden brick. I maintained my prostrate posture, feeling helpless inside. The original owner of this body had only left not long ago. The tears were the body's subconscious response to what it saw and heard. But it is also fortunate that Soul left early. She had heard herself being sent around like an It is just that I really don't want to mediate with these celestial beings in this man-eating imperial palace. Otherwise, I'd just yank off my veil and blind those two dog eyes. What ugly and faceless. The ugliest in the harem. Let me show you this sister's ultra-gorgeous celestial face that has captured tens of thousands of fans. The original owner was naive and foolish, and had no family connections or schemes. After entering the palace, she didn't know to spend money bribing the court painters. The portraits others delivered to Yinzong's hands were all manually beautified by the painters. Only hers was maliciously defaced because she didn't pay the hard work fee, and a drop of ink was dripped on the lower half of her face. Sigh. How many times must Zhao Jun's tragedy be repeated? Not only that, because of this face, the group of concubines in the imperial harem, one by one, treated her as an imaginary enemy. Harsh treatment, exclusion, scheming, pushed her to the edge of the cold palace. Sure enough, an hour and a half ago, she committed suicide in despair because she couldn't stand the bullying. Today I summoned you because I pity my subjects. From now on, you will be the Prime Minister's wife, the minister's daughter, Duan Wanyi. Yinzong slightly raised his eyes, once again casting his blade-like gaze upon me. His tone grim. Since you are leaving the palace, you are no longer my woman, but rather, my eyes placed in the Prime Minister's residence. The women in this imperial harem should not be. You understand my meaning. Watashi is a dumb beauty. I don't understand DA. Being an undercover agent or anything like that easily gets you into trouble. Forget it. Forget it. After the old eunuch led me away from the side hall, he whispered many instructions, mostly about Miss Duan's social connections. After all, snatching a minister's wife is quite shameless and harms the royal family's prestige. So Yinzong wouldn't let anyone know, and as the Prime Minister's wife, it is impossible to stay hidden in the inner quarters for long. So in certain situations, I still have to follow Miss Duan's habits to maintain the royal family's prestige. After giving instructions, the old eunuch again had the palace maids change me into the phoenix cape that noblewomen needed to wear when entering the palace. Fine silks and satins were indeed much more comfortable to wear than clothes made of ordinary fabric, as if every pore on my body was shouting, I'm a gold-digging woman. I advocate materialism. Ha! No matter what lies ahead, at least at this moment, being the Prime Minister's wife is much more comfortable than being a little concubine on the fringes of the cold palace. I wonder if the Prime Minister's wife's family has fallen on hard times. or if their ancestral graves are emitting wolf smoke, that she willingly competes with so many people for a moody rotten turnip. Although the two male leads each have their merits, and Yin Zong is the ninth five supreme, Pei Heian's family rule of only marrying one wife is absolutely lethal in this feudal patriarchal society, isn't it? If it were me, I'd choose the one surnamed Pei. Outside the palace gate, carriage parking spots were divided by official rank. Under the palace lanterns, a man in a solitary dark purple court robe stood beside the carriage like a bamboo. The old eunuch bowed and led me towards him. Lord Pei Heian ignored him, instead reaching out to me and gently calling out, "Madam." A sudden hint of shyness arose in me. That dog emperor is not human, snatching someone else's wife. And I, having just arrived in this world, seemed to not have considered the blow this would be to Pei Heian, nor had I thought about how to face him naturally. But at this moment, the night grew deeper, a cold wind suddenly rose, and other officials and ministers were all sitting in their carriages, waiting for their female family members. Only Pei Heian stood outside the carriage waiting. He must really love his wife. "Ha! Madam Pei, it is late. Hurry and return to the manor with his lordship." The old eunuch's effeminate voice rang out behind me. My mind jolted. Damn it! What retreat do I have now? Yin Zong had taken her Fei. Duan Wanyi also actively chose to become his woman, without an ounce of unwillingness. Just now she was still lying softly and weakly inside the screen. Pei Heian is pitiful. He has been cuckolded. But it wasn't me who put it on him. My standing here now is also out of compulsion. Can I borrow an atomic bomb from the state to destroy that dog and bitch couple, or can I gather my Wu Li Neen fans to cyberbully them? My current status is a chess piece, cannon fodder, but definitely not a holy mother. Who cares? I mustered my courage and extended my hand, letting it fall into Pei Heian's palm. Logically, the moment hands touch, the person in charge would instinctively grasp the other's hand in their palm. But Pei Heian hesitated for a few seconds, as if judging the sensation in his palm, and how it differed from before. My heart was pounding like a drum. I didn't dare meet his gaze. "Why is Madam wearing a veil?" "We're porting back, my lord." After Lady Pei fell into the water and changed her clothes, some red rashes appeared on her face. The imperial physician has taken her pulse. It is pollen that fell into the pond and caused the lady's hives. The old eunuch, as expected, is an old eunuch, with 50 years of workplace experience. Missing a few parts makes him sharper. As long as he can swap me in during the dark of night, he can come up with any nonsense off the cuff. The sudden tightening force pulled my wandering thoughts back, and Pei Heian gripped my hand tightly, pulling me into the carriage. Silent the whole way. The Prime Minister's residence at night was equally solemn and majestic. Outside the residence, that winter golden rain tree had old trunks and gnarled branches. Under the oppressive dark night sky, it seemed like birds were resting on it. Pei Heian's expression remained unchanged, but his grip on my hand was as firm as cold iron, pulling me all the way from the Pei Manor gate into an empty deserted room. "Who are you?" He flung his hand. The gentle aura that had surrounded him earlier suddenly vanished, and the words he spoke carried a chill. I was still thinking about how to subtly tell him about being cuckolded, so that his anger wouldn't shift to me, but the next moment, my pupils suddenly constricted. A long sword gleaming with cold light appeared from nowhere, pointing straight at my throat. I widened my eyes, my gaze slowly moving from the sword tip to the person's face, and my brain instantly went blank. Damn, handsome, until the sword tip, restrained yet mercilessly, pierced the skin on my neck. Bright red blood beads emerged, and the stinging pain pulled me out of my daze. "Hey, what is wrong with you? Don't get lost in that handsome face." "Okay, this guy really dares to kill. Don't kill me. I'll talk. I quickly blinked my eyes to show goodwill. I am a minor concubine in the harem, Now I am the wife the emperor compensated you with. Wife compensation. The sword tip came another millimeter closer. My neck felt a warm, damp liquid slide down into my collar. And 2 streams of clear tears also couldn't be held back, rolling down my cheeks and under my veil. The bleeding spot hurts so much. I need a handsome guy to hoo-hoo, preferably the one who is angry, holding a long sword, and wearing a green hat on his head. Pei Heian's swordsmanship is excellent, and his hand is even steadier. The depth of the pierce on the neck skin could cause maximum pain. Yet it was just a hair's breadth away from vital blood vessels. So it wouldn't harm one's life. Right, I choked and took a step back, intermittently recalling the events prior in this world. Just at a palace banquet half a year ago, your wife, Duan Wanyi, and the emperor developed feelings for each other. Every subsequent visit to the palace for a banquet was a secret rendezvous. The emperor wants your wife, and I am what he compensated you with. To be precise, it was to humiliate Pei Heian. The sealed room instantly grew utterly silent. I mustered up my courage and looked at that person's face again. On his jade-like handsome face, there wasn't a hint of expression. Only in those light-colored eyes. Monstrous fury erupted, like the oppressive feeling when about to reach a certain critical point. What to do? What to do? A cuckolded man wouldn't lose his mind, right? He wouldn't really This dead girl, the original owner, is really clever. Ha! She went to get reincarnated early. Otherwise, it would involve gouging out eyes and piercing the throat. Who could survive that? While nervously staring at the man in front of me, Pei Heian's wrist moved slightly. I trembled my eyelashes, and my veil was lifted. I sighed in relief. He is not going to kill me. Pei Heian squinted his eyes and sneered. This compensation. On the other hand, just then, the tightly shut door was opened from the outside, and a woman wearing a mink fur brocade robe entered quickly, her face full of worry. I heard the servant say that, as soon as you two, husband and wife, returned to the mansion, you dragged Wanyi into this room for interrogating spies. Did Wanyi? She looked at me. The words she was about to say caught in her throat. Wearing the ceremonial robes of a prime minister's wife, yet it was a different face. No one could react immediately. Pei Heian expressionlessly watched Mother Pei suddenly burst in. He was silent for a moment. Then when he spoke again, he recounted the matter extremely calmly. His whole person, like a pool of stagnant water. It is just that his darkly lowered eyes proved that beneath the calm surface, there were already surging waves. This is going too far. This is going too far. Mother Pei clutched her chest, her face livid with anger. I never knew that beneath Duan Wanyi's docile disposition, she hid such a heart for infidelity, like a red apricot branch extending over the wall. And that 95 sovereign, to be such a debauched villain, disregarding the royal family's reputation, coveting a subject's wife. She shouted in rage, not hiding the anger in her heart in the slightest. Fu Qing! This matter is serious. I'll go call your father to discuss it. No need, mother. His voice barely betrayed any emotion. What do you mean? No need. Who can endure such humiliation? A hint of ferocity flashed in Mother Pei's eyes, like an enraged mother leopard being provoked. I blinked my eyes. If this happened in modern times, it would be a fight to the death, let alone in ancient times. And for the Pei family, a prominent family of noble descent, Pei Heian stopped Mother Pei's actions, his amber pupils like an undisturbed ancient. Well, slowly turning towards me. The Emperor's grace is vast. It would be impolite to refuse. For Pei Heian, there were only 2 choices in this matter: endure or not endure. If he can't bear it, he'd immediately execute me, this impostor, and demand Duan Wanyi back, primarily by defying the imperial decree and scorning imperial favor. If he bears it, it means acknowledging me, this impostor, pretending nothing happened, and lying low to quietly await the opportunity. While the former would feel good for a moment, it would only be for a moment. Imperial power isn't so easily overthrown. Moreover, Pei Heian still holds 1/3 of the imperial power under the late emperor's will. The wife swapping is essentially a test of obedience from Yin Zong to Pei Heian. So, whether it was the fate shown to me by the black and white impermanence, or the current situation, the choice Pei Heian made is the latter. Endure. Mother Pei's eyes welled up with tears, and she choked out, "My son has suffered." This powerful minister's reputation might seem glorious, but in reality, it is like oil cooking on a raging fire. Every day in court, he calculates human intentions, breaks deadlocks, and constantly compromises. Yet he never expected to be secretly stabbed in the back by this inner compound. As she spoke, Mother Pei turned her gaze to me. Then her. "What do you plan to do with her?" Pei Heian's expression became relaxed as usual, as if having confirmed his choice. He once again put on his gentle and kind facade. The cold and angry appearance from just now was merely an illusion. "Mother, there are no imperial concubines in the Pei manor, only Prime Minister's wife Duan Wanyi, who just returned from the palace with your son." I sighed a little in relief. Although I didn't know what Pei Heian was planning to do, at least my life was safe for now. Just then, a guard came from outside the door to report, saying that 2 palace maids had been sent from the palace, bestowed by the imperial concubine, to the Prime Minister's wife. The imperial concubine was, of course, just an excuse. It was merely Yin Zong openly placing his spies in the Prime Minister's mansion. Mother Pei suddenly sneered, and it dazzled my eyes. No wonder they say Pei Heian is handsome. It turns out his mother is already so outstanding, with prominent features, delicate skin, and a face full of allure. How could such an alluring mother give birth to a son as gentle as jade? The next second, I was noticed and glared at. It was already very late at night. By the time I was led by a maid to Duan Wanyi's original courtyard, I had already lost all my strength. The bleeding on my neck had stopped, but there were still bruises on my wrists. Before, I was laughing and joking, amidst the grudges, loves, and hates of a group of people. Now that no one was around, the whole world quieted down, which instead made me think of home, and of my relatives in another world. I sat on the edge of the pearwood bed, hugging my knees, with no sleepiness whatsoever, looking at the silver-white moonlight hanging in the night sky outside the window. I wished I could recite. I raise my head and gaze at the bright moon. I lower my head and long for my homeland. A string of wind chimes sounded from the corridor, and Pei Heian entered the room, bringing with him a chill. I poked my head out, puzzled. How did he get here? Pei Heian met my gaze and spoke unhurriedly. "This is my courtyard. I used to live in this courtyard too." My mind whirred, and I understood. How could a young couple, only married for a year, bear to sleep in separate rooms, especially since the Pei family rules only allowed one wife? There was no such thing as live-in concubines, so husband and wife naturally shared one courtyard. And I heard that before Duan Wanyi entered the palace, the couple was quite loving. I lazily got up and walked away, making a gesture of invitation towards the bed. His Adam's apple bobbed in the shadows, but his light-colored eyes showed no emotion. I hope Miss Chu won't hold it against me for doing something impulsive out of anger earlier. Yo. He found out about the original owner's life story so quickly. I looked at him in surprise. His head, slightly lowered, like a crane's neck, bowed, and his dark purple wide sleeves overlapped as he brought them to his eyebrows. A trace of surprise flashed in my eyes. Was Pei Heian bowing to apologize to me? I asked, puzzled and tentatively. No offense. No offense. If you didn't get angry over this, you'd be famous forever. But Lord Pei, I'm innocent too. Can I leave after this storm passes? I haven't explored the magnificent landscapes of ancient times yet. Youth has no price. The world is at my feet. Hyan silently watched me for a moment. The palace sent 2 palace maids to my courtyard, presumably to monitor our marital life. The unspoken meaning was no. I lowered my eyes forlornly. Oh. I knew the chances weren't high. However, since you are willing to be taken as compensation, your food, clothing, and daily expenses in the manor will all follow the previous standards. You will not be mistreated. It is just that the Prime Minister's residence has strict family rules, and the punishments are also severe. There are some things you can do and some things you cannot do. You should have a Pei Hyan's voice was still very gentle. His conversation with me, this tall person used to humiliate him, could even be called polite. But he was warm on the surface, cold in his heart. Harboring a hidden threat, he bowed and apologized for hurting me in his rage, but he had no intention of calling someone to treat my wound, leaving it entirely to my platelets to do their job. He said I wouldn't be deprived of food, clothing, and daily expenses, but his words subtly warned me to stay in my place. I tugged at my stiff face and swallowed back the words I wanted to say. Forget it. Handsome guys are allowed to be arrogant. From that night on, I was confined to the high courtyard. 2 palace maids sent from the palace monitored me, and to the Paya family, I was temporarily a dangerous element. With these 2 factors combined, I was naturally restricted everywhere. A few days later, I learned that they knew nothing about the absurd palace affair. They merely received an imperial decree to see if Pei Hyan and I were loving spouses. Pei Hyan knew what the person in the palace wanted to see. To reassure them, he specifically requested a period of sick leave and stayed in High Garden daily. During the day, he played the zither and practiced calligraphy, then went back to his room to rest when night grew deep. He wore a resigned look, as if all thunder, rain and dew were imperial grace. It is just that his illness didn't seem faked. As soon as the sky darkened, he would cough non-stop, and his usual crisp scent was mixed with a faint bitter medicine smell. Master Pei, who was as elegant as green bamboo, seemed a bit listless. Every time, I could only cup my cheeks and sigh. Love really hurts. Ah. And I wasn't doing any better. In ancient times without phones or internet, lasting 3 days was already badass, let alone half a month. What is more, I can't play the zither, can't embroider, and even less can I do calligraphy. I didn't even have a little something to pass the time. After my 8th time sweetly saying into the bronze mirror, "Babies, send the streamer a carnival," the 2 maids who monitored me all day thought I'd gone crazy and weren't so diligent anymore. So, I climbed over the wall. I didn't know where this wall would lead once I climbed over it. No matter how I climbed, I was still in the Prime Minister's residence. But it was better than rotting and stinking in that small courtyard. The courtyard wall wasn't high enough, but it was easy to get up and hard to get down. The moment I landed, I fell flat on my face. Raising my eyes, just a step away, was a handsome and peerless figure, impressive agility. Pei Hyan held a jade flute, tilting his head and lowering his eyes to look at me, with a composed expression that made me wonder how long he'd been watching my mishap. I ignored the sarcasm in his words and quickly got up to explain. "I'm just bored of staying in the yard, and I don't know any embroidery to pass the time. So I want to come out and wander around." I was absolutely not thinking of running away. He mused for a moment. The legitimate daughter of the Duan family comes from a scholarly family. Her father is the Minister of Rites, most knowledgeable in etiquette and regulations, proficient in all arts of Qin, Qi, Shu, and Hua, and her words and deeds are even a model for women in the capital. So badass. Even more impressive than the persona I built online. I'll inform my mother in a bit. You will go to her place to learn manners from now on. Ah, no, buddy. I immediately put on a fawning expression, hitched up my skirt, and chased after his retreating steps. "No, Lord Pei, I think staying in the courtyard is pretty good." Listening to your flute and zither every now and then makes me feel completely uplifted. Really, if I were a cow, you would have enlightened me into a demon by now. Lord Pei, can I not learn any manners? I'm, dim-witted. I'm an E-person. I'm clueless about everything. I won't be able to learn. I'm afraid I'll disturb your mother's peace. Lord Pei. Damn it. Sick and still walking so fast. Hope you cough yourself to death tonight. Learning manners is a terrible thing. When I was little, my mum wanted me to be more composed. So she made me practice sitting posture for 2 hours every day. As a result, when I started elementary school, the teacher, wanting the students to be well behaved, also started the first lesson with sitting posture practice. By the time it is said that in ancient times, people would kneel in the ancestral hall. I think my butt can die. But my legs must be fine. With an uneasy heart, I waited until the next day, when the mama from Madame Pei's courtyard came to take me over. Madame Pei seemed very annoyed to see me, her eyes and brows showing weak and haggard exhaustion. She hated Duan Wanye, who cuckolded her son, and also hated Yin Zong, who shamed her son, but one she couldn't get back at, and the other she dared not hate, so I naturally became the person she could detest. Originally, basic human courtesy dictates that if someone hates me, I should immediately hate them back, but by a twist of fate, I actually quite liked and admired her. I knew her name was Zhu Ling before she married Pei Haiyan's father. She was a female general who fought on battlefields. Valiant and spirited, brave and resourceful. When Pei Haiyan and Yin Zong were fighting for supremacy, she was about to redon her armor and go into battle, but was poisoned to death in the back chambers. Fu Qing asked me to teach you manners. Have you ever learned any while you were secluded in your chambers before? I knelt on the prayer cushion, reined in my thoughts, and shook my head. Zhu Ling frowned. Are you proficient in any of the 4 arts of Qin, chess, calligraphy, or painting? I am proficient in the 4 arts, but it is piano, gamoku, he novels, he comics, and E is silent. Seeing me hesitate to answer, her frown deepened, as if I were utterly useless. Actually, it is fine to be useless. It is already. In modern times, I'm still a multi-talented internet celebrity in beauty, food, covers, and more. With 500,000 fans, I pursed my lips and shook my head again. Faye can't do this, can't do that either. How did you get into the palace in the first place? Surely you know the 3 obediences and 4 virtues for women. Zhu Ling's tone was filled with anger. Faye, I know this. I looked up in surprise. Faye, the 3 obediences are to politics, to law, to business, and the 4 virtues are to gain power, gain influence, gain wealth, gain profit. Faye, I just got the latest internet definition of the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Luckily I remembered them, otherwise I really wouldn't know any of them. The courtyard, which had originally been whispering, fell silent. The 2 nannies, including the maid, all stared at me with wide eyes, and a look of bewilderment flashed in Zhu Ling's eyes. Feiyu, her words caught, then she sighed. Fei did I answer wrong? Zhu Ling was silent for a moment. Fei, it seems not. Fei, I breathed a sigh of relief, smiled, and said, Fei General Zhu. It seems I don't know what ordinary women know, but I have my own skills. Fei Feio. This rhetorical question is so Gigi. Mama, I'm here. I stood up from the futon on my own, took Pei Haiyan's mother's hand, walked to the dressing table, and said confidently, a woman adorns herself for her admirer. Even if she gallops on the battlefield, she will care about her appearance. What I can do is help every beauty find her confidence. Fei actually, last night, I was looking forward to meeting the rumored valiant General Zhu, and I was wondering how majestic and serious she would be. As soon as I came in, I even thought Prime Minister Pei had a twin sister. And then I got to thinking again. Her face flushed red, before she even had time to shout, How dare you! The rabbit fur brush was already shoved into her face. After the previous cold snap, The days gained some warmth. I stood at the entrance of High Courtyard study, hesitating, wavering, finally gathering the courage to knock on the door. Lord Pei, can I ask not to learn etiquette anymore? Upon hearing this, Pei Haiyan lifted his eyes from the letters on the desk, his tone a bit strained. Why? I cleared my throat. Actually, I quite enjoyed learning etiquette from his mother. General Zhu was trained by me and became very amiable, and at least I could move between two courtyards. But I mumbled awkwardly, like a mosquito. I'm afraid if I learn a few more days of etiquette at your mother's place, you won't be the only child in the family anymore. You have no idea how brightly your dad's eyes lit up when he saw your rejuvenated mother. Where we come from, there are struggles for the heir apparent. You need to be more mindful. If it weren't for worrying about you being abandoned by your wife and then by your parents, and completely falling into depression and turning dark, I would also want to stay in my comfort zone. A soft chuckle came from beside my ear. I've heard about it, and your mother also told me about your 3 obediences and 4 virtues and sparkling wit. You don't need to worry about me not being the only child in the family. My father drank a sterility potion after I was born. Damn, what a peerless good man. However, is it still in time for me to withdraw this application? Pei Haiyan's smile quickly faded. That light laugh was like a fleeting glimpse. And then his whole being fell into silence again, especially since I felt he was exceptionally different today. I remember you said you couldn't write. Then you'll follow me to learn some characters from. It is settled then. That very night, I knew what was wrong with Pei Haiyan because Juan Wanyi was pregnant. Women in the palace need 3 months after conceiving, before it can be made public. And some concubines, fearing being plotted against, won't let anyone know until they're visibly pregnant. Yet Dun Wanyi had been in the palace for less than 2 months. So calculating the time, she must have had an affair with the emperor, while she was still the prime minister's wife, rather than merely developing mutual affection. I thought about it again. Pei Haiyan's cuckoldry was truly monumental. It was so green it made one feel pity for him. His coughing tonight grew increasingly violent, as if he was about to cough out his heart and lungs, which was frightening to hear. In the past, I always kept my distance to avoid suspicion, and asked no questions. But at this moment, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Finally, I sighed, picked up the candlestick, and walked over. Did I disturb you? He looked at the light of the candle. Tomorrow, you'll go sleep in the West Wing, and I'll deal with those 2 palace maids. Pretty good, I nodded. But my gaze fell upon Pei Haiyan, who was leaning sideways on the bed, his lips stained with blood. It was the first time I felt that elegant classical charm and fragile decadence could coexist in one person. Every time he bent over and choked, the shoulder blades protruding beneath his sleeping robe were like broken crane wings. It inexplicably made one feel miserable. Women have an innate talent for empathy and loving others, unmatched by anyone. Especially since Pei Haiyan was still so much to my liking. I picked up the bowl of bitter medicine that had completely cooled down from the table and offered it to him. He turned his head away, pretending not to see it, showing his proud spirit at that moment. I sighed and put the bitter medicine back down. If he doesn't drink it, then he doesn't drink it. I couldn't blame him for being like this. Proud and noble people, when humiliated like this, wouldn't want others to see their embarrassment. Whether in the world outline those 2 ghosts gave me, or in the original owner's only remaining memories, Pei Haiyan was always a person of astonishing talent and brilliance. He was the first on the list of desired husbands in the hearts of the capital's unmarried ladies, and the Pei family was even the first choice for all the matriarchs who wanted to marry off their daughters. It is just that the Pei and Juan families had an engagement set from childhood, so everyone could only fantasize about it. I frowned, looking at his sorry state. So, was Yin Zong really that good? Good enough for Juan Wanyi to abandon Pei Haiyan and the promise of being his only legal wife annoyed. I squatted down, and after racking my brains, I finally offered a dry comfort. Lord Pei, why tie 1,000 knots for a passing guest? Kick away those you can't keep. Tormenting yourself is the worst strategy. Seeing the other party's silence, I knew I had said too much, and prepared to get up and leave. Wait, Pei Heian grabbed my wrist. The word love hurts too deeply. Some things really should be in the past now. Chu Yi, can you stay with me for a moment tonight? Keep me company and talk. I just offered a verbal comfort, but I can't actually put it into practice. I showed hesitation. The words of refusal were on my lips when he interrupted them with a violent cough. His sorrowful tea-colored eyes flickered under the candlelight. He gave a bitter smile. So even you despise me? He let go of my hand. I was being presumptuous. I sat down again. Let's talk then. Let's talk. I can't do anything to break a man's heart. Pei Heian seemed genuinely ready to discard the past. That is right. This is how Prime Minister Pei, who will wield great power in the future, should be always composed and outstanding, with an My cough has improved a lot. The doctor says it will be completely cured in a few days. I returned from Madame Pei's courtyard, and happened to see Pei Heian standing in front of the pavilion in Heiyai courtyard, smiling at me, his posture as tall and straight as a pine. His narrow, long eyes, like gurgling spring water. Then congratulations, Lord Pei, as all things renew, old ailments should heal, wishing you lasting joy and peace. I walked over and returned his smile, offering my congratulations. His tone shifted. How was your calligraphy practice today? Bring it here. Hearing this, the maid in the courtyard quickly brought over the results of my perfunctory and sloppy calligraphy practice. I mumbled with my head down. Lord Pei, my calligraphy is probably unbearable to look at. Pei Heian shook those few sheets of Xuan paper and let out a light chuckle. It truly could make Kanjie weep upon seeing it. I noticed you. You really take things seriously. Seeing my forced smile, he quickly tried to make amends. It is already quite good for such a short time. Today happens to be my day off, madam. Would you be willing to listen to me play a tune? Pei Heian invited me, so I naturally sat down readily. As long as we don't talk about calligraphy practice, anything is fine. He was too strict. His demands were high, and he assigned so many calligraphy copybooks every day that my wrist would tremble by evening. I'll be going home in a little over a year. Why practice calligraphy anymore? I don't plan on becoming a calligrapher in modern times, and besides, it is not like I'm illiterate. I can still recognize radicals. The early summer breeze passed through the pavilion. When the zither music began, the copper bells on the eaves chimed in response. The first piece was a poignant and sorrowful melody. When it ended, his eyes flickered as he glanced at me. Then he once again caressed the strings and played. This time, it was Phoenix Seek's Mate, and I looked up, somewhat surprised. Pei Heian was on that day. He played Feng Chu Huang 4 times, and only barely stopped when he saw me constantly lowering my head like a quail, then let out a helpless sigh. You once said you couldn't play the zither or go, and didn't understand music theory. But the affection in the song, can you truly not hear? He reached out his hand, bearing thin calluses, lifted my face, and those eyes, usually so clear and serene, were assertively intense for once. Chu Yi, answer me. Lord P, we've only known each other for 3 months. My heart stirred with ripples, yet I still soberly count. Isn't it too fast? It was so fast that I couldn't even crack a joke, and I instantly became completely serious. And you can't confess just because others abandoned you, and you're eager to prove yourself. You can't confess just because you don't have a suitable beauty by your side, feeling empty and lonely. Nor can you confess because of the comfort and companionship I've given you during this time, because none of this is love. I leaned back, moving his hand away, then quickly got up and ran back to the west wing. That brief moment of accompanying him, had already added some awkwardness to their relationship, and this straightforward move plunged the already awkward relationship into an indescribably ambiguous state. I remained calm. In fact, putting aside whether he was sincere or not, I wasn't entirely unmoved either. Peiheyan himself was a man easily capable of capturing one's heart, a man of noble character, with a perfect balance of tension and relaxation, dignified and peaceful, capable of holding a high position at a young age. But what attracted me more than all of these was his forbearance and his ability to bide his time. What was even more terrifying was that from the very beginning, once a woman develops a heart of pity for a man, it is hard to break free. Fortunately, he wasn't in a hurry. He didn't forcefully demand a clear answer from me again. Instead, he tactfully stepped back and continued to interact with me, just as before, but I could feel him inching our relationship closer. His steps were exceptionally careful and cautious, yet the direction was steadily closing in. Faced with his cautious closeness, I always felt a little flustered. Yet I didn't know why I was flustered. Perhaps it was that heart which had long since fallen, but was unwilling to easily admit it. Or perhaps, even if I admitted it, my reason wouldn't allow me to indulge myself. I allow myself to be selfish. But I won't allow myself to be too selfish. I won't willingly stay in this world that doesn't belong to me because of love. If I indulged myself and accepted this relationship, what would happen to Peiheyan when I leave 2 years later? Do I want to abandon him again like Miss Duan? Sorry, I can't do anything that would hurt a man. A rare cool breeze came in the summer evening. The 2 young palace maids returned from Mother Pei's courtyard, carrying food trays. It has been too hot these past few days. Using ice shaved into a fine consistency, plus milk and fruit, I barely managed to make a delicious and refreshing shaved ice. I vaguely remembered that Mother Pei loves sweets, so I sent some over. The 2 young girls' eyes lit up when they saw me sitting on the veranda outside the West Wing, enjoying the breeze. Just as they were about to quicken their pace to come over, in the next second, they saw the man behind me. They lowered their eyes, bowed, and slipped away in one smooth motion. I understood, and turned my head, helplessly. My eyes met Peiheyan's lowered gaze. His straight back, like green bamboo, leaned forward slightly, drawing the distance between us closer again. His voice was soft and gentle, with a hint of coaxing. This is the new cosmetic powder from Luoyuan Pavilion. I heard you've been dabbling in cosmetics and food lately. I looked left and right. Then finally, with a hint of reservation, opened the wooden box inside. The shell-sized powder compact was adorned with tiny gems. The powder looked like moonlight solidified. A light rub with a fingertip made it smooth as silk. The color was even more exquisite, echoing the gems on the compact, like the blush of a maiden's spring awakening. Satisfied. 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 In ancient times, good cosmetics were always given very poetic names. They would then be passed down as. I was a bit curious. What is the name of this cosmetic powder? He deliberately raised his eyes and glanced at me. It is called Lianli Branch. All right, no more talking. I lowered my head and deliberately suppressed the joy showing in my eyes. I couldn't really take this cosmetic powder, nor could I return it. I just couldn't bear to part with it. You don't need to feel burdened. I heard what you liked, and just picked it up when I passed that shop after court. In a few days, it'll be the Minister of Right's big birthday. If you come with me then, you can use it perfectly. Minister of Rights. That is Duan Wanyi's father. As a daughter who married out, she needs to go back and attend the banquet. This will also be your first time appearing before everyone, as Duan Wanyi. But don't be nervous, just stay by my side then. And with me around, nothing will happen to you. His confident yet gentle tone was exceptionally reassuring. I nodded, a smile spreading across my face. Thank you, Lord Pei, you're a good person. After giving him a good person card, I deliberately glanced at the sky again, and calmly excused myself. It is getting dark. I'll head back to my room first. A flicker of helplessness suddenly crossed his eyes. Since you think I'm a good person, why do you always avoid me? No, not at all. Lord, you're busy with official duties during the day, and I go to bed early, so we just missed each other. This clumsy acting and excuse were clearly not enough to fool Pei Heian. Not wanting to continue the conversation, fearing I'd say something even worse, I hastily bowed, and, as I turned to flee in a hurry, an unknown flying insect flew straight towards my face. Ah, you little flying insect, do you want to die? When my nose bumped into the chest of the person behind me, only 2 words remained in my brain, splitting into left and right hemispheres that started fighting each other. So fragrant. Oh no, so fragrant. Oh no. Pei Heian took the opportunity to pull me into his arms, one hand shooing away the large flying insect whose wings rustled. His smile relaxed. When the carriage swayed its way to the minister's residence, I only then realized how grand this birthday banquet was. Pei Heian got out of the carriage first, extending his hand towards me in front of it. Madam. The madams and young ladies who had come to the banquet watched this scene with envy, whispering amongst themselves. I placed my hand on his, and following his lead, I stepped down from the carriage. What I was thinking in my mind, however, was our first meeting that night outside the palace gates, where he had also gently called out Madam. It is just that he was originally going to call the real Duan Wanyi. At that time, I also speculated that he must have loved his wife very much. Why are you still wearing a veil today? A clear, gentle murmur came from beside my ear. My tone was listless. I wear it if I want to. It always makes me feel a bit more at ease. He was silent for a moment, then reassuringly tightened our clasped hands, and lightly brushed my cheek through the veil. A very intimate gesture. I blinked, my cheek feeling a slight tickle from the veil, and said nothing more. Duan Wanyi's father was in the front hall, beaming with joy as he accepted congratulations and flattery from the guests. As the emperor's favorite during this period, he was inevitably riding high. As for the reason he received such favor, as Duan Wanyi's biological parents, they knew it well, but their daughter didn't elope with some poor scholar or stable boy. Instead, she latched onto the most noble man under heaven, even making him disregard ethics and conduct by finding someone to replace her and enter the palace. The minister and his wife were more so smugly self-satisfied. When Pei Heian and I walked into the main hall, their smiles instantly became strained. Father-in-law, mother-in-law? Pei Heian lowered his chin, his eye corners showing a humble posture, and respectfully bowed. Father Duan stammered, unable to speak. It was Mother Duan who, with a flash of inspiration, forced a smile and stepped forward, grabbing my wrist and pulling me away from the main hall with force. Wanyi dear, Mother hasn't seen you in ages. Come with Mother. Let's have a heart-to-heart. Guests were like clouds all around. I looked at Pei Heian with a plea for help, but he had already turned his back and started conversing with Father Duan, not receiving my signal at all. All the way, I was dragged into a room by Duan Wanyi's mother. She barely reined in the smile on her face and said distantly, Miss, there are many people and eyes today, so you'll stay here for now. When it is time for the meal, I'll send someone to open the door for you. After speaking, she gave me a push and quickly closed and locked the door. Am I a canary? Why does everyone want? This place was secluded. The layout looked like a small reception room. After it was locked, the room was dim, and my nostrils were filled with a stale smell. I tried to comfort myself, thinking this place was quiet and peaceful, perfect for avoiding the bustling flattery and infighting in the front yard. Before Mother Duan could even leave, Pei Heian's voice rang out from behind her, carrying a chilling question. Weren't you going to have a private chat? How come AI is locked in the room alone? Did she do something wrong to upset mother-in-law? AI, if you don't listen carefully, It making a mistake is also a double entendre. The door was reopened, bringing light to the dim room. And Pei Heian stood in the light, his brows still etched with a cold gleam. He was just angry. My breathing hitched, and as if possessed, I threw myself into his arms. I watched too many zombie movies when I was little. A room with the door closed, dim light, a secluded atmosphere, and then add a few pieces of antique furniture. It was too similar. Duan's mother, who was next to her, pulled a long face and said unhappily, "How unseemly." Halfway through the banquet, the eunuch's shrill voice pierced through the hubbub of the feast. The news that the emperor would honor Minister Duan's birthday banquet with his presence had already been announced by imperial decree. So the guests weren't particularly surprised. Like a surging tide, they all rose to their feet and performed kneeling bows. I haven't developed the habit of the ancients kneeling everywhere, so I was half a beat slow. Pei Heian took my hand under his concealing wide sleeve and pulled me to bow together. Amidst the brick-paved ground, I subconsciously turned my head to search for his gaze, but the next moment, my eyes intertwined with his. In those lowered eyes, there was nothing. Zong came with Duan Wanye. The newly favored concubine wore a luxurious and intricate palace dress, and under her peony-style coiffure, she also wore a veil. Her beautiful eyes, which were revealed, first pretended to casually glance at Pei Heian, sitting next to me, and finally, filled with complex emotions. With Yinzong present, the banquet naturally wasn't as relaxed as before. Even the music played by the musicians, and the dances performed by the dancers, became much more restrained. I heard that before Madame Pei got married, she was a famous lady of a prominent family, in the capital, knowledgeable and reasonable, with outstanding. Lord Duan is skilled in raising his daughter. Zong praised Minister Duan with a hooked smile. Many of those who came to celebrate his birthday were colleagues from the imperial court. Hearing this, they understood in their hearts that the emperor was once again targeting Prime Minister Pei. I wonder, on Lord Duan's grand birthday today, has your esteemed daughter prepared a congratulatory gift? The previous sentence sounded to everyone like a compliment to Duan Wanye, but the real Duan Wanye was concubine one, who was beside him, knowledgeable and reasonable, skilled in raising his daughter. Isn't this blatant sarcasm? Looking up, hurt and embarrassment, indeed flashed in Duan Wanye's eyes. Before I could figure out what was going on, Pei Heian replied for me, "Husband and wife are one. So naturally, gifts should be prepared together. I heard that father-in-law enjoys the art of health preservation, so Wanye and I personally selected many rare wild ginsengs and lingji mushrooms." Minister Duan also quickly stood up and echoed, Yes, I very much like this gift. I has always been a filial daughter. To have such a daughter, I am very pleased." Minister Duan had been in officialdom for many years, able to effortlessly churn out impressive-sounding words. But in this situation, it was as if Pei Heian and Minister Duan were jointly protecting a wife and daughter named Duan Wanye. It is just that Duan Wanye wasn't the Duan Wanye. She was concubine one, newly favored in the palace. She watched with her own eyes as her own father and her former husband, who grew up with her as childhood sweethearts, jointly protected and praised another woman who had taken her name, identity, and everything. How could she possibly endure it? And I instantly understood Yin Zong's purpose. It was nothing more than the melodramatic plot of constant misunderstandings, typical of male and female leads in ancient romance novels. From ancient times, emperors' suspicions have been as numerous as a sieve's holes. Yin Zong first wanted to test if Duan Wanye had any regrets, and second, he wanted to test if Pei Heian would accept his fate. I looked at Duan Wanye again, and in her eyes, it was no longer the initial embarrassment, but a mix of grievance and resentment. And even when her gaze met mine, it carried blatant hatred. Why hate me? Isn't this what you chose yourself? Is your slightly bulging lower abdomen from overeating? The young emperor seated at the head let out an ambiguous laugh. It seems Prime Minister Pei is very fond of this wife. But I wonder if Miss Duan, as an exemplar in the capital, truly possesses outstanding literary talent, compared to my rather talented beloved concubine, who is superior. Since this banquet always follows the old routine of drinking, listening to music, and enjoying dances, why don't we imitate the refined taste of the previous dynasty, and hold a Feihuling flying petal poetry game? Who would dare refuse once the emperor spoke? They repeatedly said. Your Majesty is wise. Both of these men knew that the original host was a showgirl from a humble family, who was elevated into the palace. And although she had studied some poetry and literature, she ultimately could not compare to the talent and knowledge of the powerful and noble. Yin Zong's arrangement of this game was clearly to humiliate Pei Haiyan once again, simply because of what Pei Haiyan said just now. A husband and wife are originally one. Under my veil, I was almost laughing from anger. With such endless entanglement, Yin Zong might as well just swap Pei Haiyan into the palace, then I could really ship them. I've even thought of a name, Pei Nizong Ma. Pei accompanies you on horseback. Also a pun on Pei and Yin Zong's names. Since it is the minister's birthday banquet, let wine be the order of the game. As for those who can't come up with a line, I won't make things difficult. They'll just be fined 1 cup of wine. The female guests present heard these words and went from originally eager to try to nervous and uneasy. Women naturally get drunk easily. What if they lost composure? Pei Haiyan whispered in my ear. Don't be nervous. If you can't answer, then don't answer. I'll drink for you. Minister Duan's birthday banquet had many people. Besides royalty and nobles, and fellow officials, there were also many common folk who were relatives or acquaintances. This, Fei Hualing, naturally couldn't be participated in by everyone. Only those designated by the emperor could, and the rest automatically acted as spectators. Precisely because of this, those participating in Fei Hualing became even more nervous, afraid they couldn't come up with a response, or their literary talent wasn't good enough. Everyone vied with each other to show off their literary talent, meticulously picking words and phrases, and using flowery language. After a few rounds, Pei Haiyan had already drunk 3 cups of wine for me. His complexion was cool and pale, and a faint blush had spread to his cheeks and behind his ears. I observed the expressions of a few people. Minister Duan and his wife glared at me several times, looking disappointed and frustrated, seemingly saying how I was like a blockhead, ruining the reputation of their daughter's status. And Consort Wan, who was sitting next to Yin Zong at the head table, was indeed exceptionally talented, living up to her reputation as a capital city prodigy. Yet, she constantly held back an unacknowledged jealousy, resentful of Pei Haiyan, for blocking drinks for me again and again. Fei Hualing inherently gets harder the further it progresses. Many people had already penalized themselves by drinking a few cups and admitting defeat, but I couldn't actively admit defeat, because I had been personally picked by the dog emperor. Pei Haiyan skillfully poured himself wine, raised his glass, and gestured to the people around, preparing to down it in one go. Stop drinking. I raised my hand to stop his movement, receiving the doubt and worry in his eyes. I turned my head speechless. Do you really think I'm some illiterate? I at least received 9 years of compulsory education, chose liberal arts for the college entrance exam, and was a top student who got into a Ayayal university. Yin Zong didn't even demand originality. I can still recite a few poems related to wine. Not answering just now was because I thought it was better this way, basically matching the original owner's image of not showing talent. If he were to discover something amiss, who knows what trouble he'd stir up again. But seeing Pei Haiyan drinking 1 penalty cup after another for me, and Duan Wanyi stubbornly trying again and again without giving up, I also felt that it is just showing off. No need to carry such a big burden. Sis loves showing off the most, I whispered to Pei Haiyan. I suddenly remembered a poem. Under everyone's gaze, I cleared my throat and recited a poem for the first time. Today we have wine, today we get drunk. Tomorrow's sorrow, tomorrow we'll worry. Good. The Mad Dog Emperor led the applause. This line certainly matches our state of mind. Prime Minister Pei's wife is truly silent for a while, then stuns everyone with a single sound. The people at the banquet who could continue playing were already few and far between. After I finished speaking, Duan Wanyi pondered for a moment, and then continued. I played another game of chess. Call your boy out to exchange for fine wine, and with you, I'll drown endless sorrow. Consort 1 was clearly flustered, her eyes darting around, and she stammered out a line of poetry that mentioned wine. I can't come up with another one. Your Imperial Highness is even better. I nodded in defeat, giving Duan Wanyi plenty of face, and also, knowing that in such an occasion, the only one who could win was the Emperor's consort Wan. After drinking a penalty cup, my gaze met Pei Heian's, those tea-colored eyes glimmering faintly. What is wrong? I nervously whispered. Should I not have shown off? His gently lowered long lashes were like raven feathers. The corner of his mouth slightly curved. No, those 2 lines of poetry were too stunning. I just didn't expect my wife to be so full of hidden depths, like a treasure waiting to be discovered. I laughed awkwardly, and explained, they're all memorized. How could they not be stunning? They're even in textbooks. Halfway through the birthday banquet, maidservants came forward to refill wine and change dishes. A maidservant with twin buns walked furtively towards my table, and before I could react, she swiftly pulled down the veil on my face. Please forgive me, madam. This servant is clumsy and slow-witted. She looked up at me and gasped. Madam, your face. A gasp rang out from all around. My face! I looked around blankly and helplessly, not understanding why everyone looked like they'd seen a ghost, until Pei Heian quickly picked up a veil and put it on me. Only then did those strange gazes lessen. No wonder Lord Juan wanted to build a reputation for his daughter's outstanding talent. With such an ugly face, she could only compensate in other areas. Yinzong swept a glance with a half-smile, half-sneer. Is Prime Minister Pei, such a handsome man, really willing to live his life with a woman whose face is covered in dark spots? Exactly. The Pei family also has a family rule of only marrying one wife. Prime Minister Pei is truly wronged. I wonder how they were matched back then. I'm afraid the Juan family schemed against him. Am I the only one thinking wrong here? Sharing a room every day, Prime Minister Pei must surely extinguish the candles before he dares to go to bed. Don't even mention it. These two have been married for 2 years, and Duan Wanyi has never gotten pregnant. That shouldn't be. On the way from the banquet, whispers kept lingering in my ears. Pei Heian, as if he hadn't heard anything, led me to the carriage. Don't take idle gossip to heart. I've already called the manor doctor. He'll come treat you as soon as we get home. Maybe it is just an allergy, or you got something dirty on you. You'll recover your beauty in no time. My mind and spirit were both sluggish, my brain pondering the reason for becoming like this. Hearing this, I nodded numbly. I don't really care too much about this face. Even this body, if my soul hadn't entered it, would have long been a pile of dry bones. Just as I was about to step onto the carriage, the palace maid beside Duan Wanyi ran over. The minister's wife invites you to meet. Not going. Pei Heian's eyes suddenly grew cold, like warm jade turning icy, scaring the palace maid who came to inform them into a shiver. I want to go. I tugged his wide sleeve and walked up from behind him. I want to figure out at which step I was tricked. Was it the only cup of wine I drank, or was there some incense in the room? The minister's wife pushed me into that caused spots to appear on people's faces. Having come to this, cicadas sing praises of summer, not caring about trivial matters. So for many things, I didn't want to investigate the whys and wherefores, the grudges, only regarding myself as a transient visitor in this world. passing through with laughter and joy. But what happened today is truly bizarre. Black spots inexplicably appeared on my face. I've suspected the minister and his wife, but it involves their daughter's reputation, so they have no reason to do this. I also suspected Yin Zong, but it still doesn't make sense. Yin Zong's actions are arrogant and reckless. But apart from the matter of swapping wives, he has handled other matters with a sense of proportion. To humiliate Pei Heian by risking unveiling my veil and letting someone with ulterior motives recognize me would clearly be more trouble than it is worth. Could it be that when Pei Heian touched my face when I first arrived, he rubbed some dirt onto it? But that shouldn't be. He is exceptionally clean, and his hands were spotless then. I inexplicably wanted to get to the bottom of this, like a woman's sixth sense, always feeling that the truth would be very important to me. I'm worried. I'll go with. His thin lips were pressed tightly together, his brows slightly furrowed. The palace maid beside us quickly replied with a tense voice, Lord Pei, it is not appropriate for men to enter the inner quarters. My exposed eyes curved into crescents, but my tone was carefree, as if deliberately teasing him. It is nothing. A worthless life. So let's just do it. Lotus fragrance, fragmented cicada chirps, emerald water, long pavilion shadow. When the palace maid brought me to the lakeside pavilion, only Duan Wanyi, dressed in opulent clothes, and leisurely sipping tea, was there. Your Highness, the person has been brought. Duan Wanyi had already removed her veil, with her delicate brows and red lips revealing pomegranate-like teeth. She was a beauty. She glanced at me lightly, then gestured with her eyes to the palace maid beside her. To call her a palace maid isn't quite right. Duan Wanyi had originally entered the palace for the banquet with her personal attendant, who naturally became her personal palace maid now. Upon receiving the order, she rushed up aggressively and slapped me across the face. You Jen Pizza, Jen Pizzi. You occupied my lady's identity and didn't even cherish it, instead, embarrassing yourself in public and ruining her reputation. My left cheek stung, and I quickly reacted, also fiercely stepping forward and slapping Duan Wanyi, who was watching the show. She widened her eyes in disbelief. I then slapped the personal palace maid, who was preparing to step forward to protect her master. Afraid that if I didn't hit her, she'd think I was being partial, Duan Wanyi covered her face, tears welling up, but she chuckled angrily. Aren't you afraid I'll make His Majesty exterminate your entire clan? I am, but guess whose clan will be exterminated? Yours or mine. Don't forget whose identity I'm currently holding. You're very bold. Maybe because I've seen bigger scenes. I deliberately alluded to the wife-swapping incident to mock her. I originally came to try and extract information about the black spots on my face. But I didn't expect it was just Duan Wanyi wanting to punish me for ruining her reputation. She had already given up on him, so why care so much now? She wasn't angry that Yin Zong had just mocked her. Wasn't angry that he also used her as a pawn. Wasn't angry that he casually found someone untalented and ugly to replace her. But instead she is angry at me. So two-faced and possessive. Are you just bullying me because I have no power or influence? I really want to hit these fae with a stick and string them together like candied whores. However, seeing how much they value reputation also indirectly indicates that this poison wasn't administered by the minister's couple and Duan Wanyi. Then, who could it be? Your feelings for Fu Qing aren't pure, are they? She reined in her smile and asked abruptly. Oh, you probably don't know this is a Yan's courtesy name. Only close people know it. He won't like you. All the tenderness he shows you now is fake, just to make His Majesty dispel his suspicions and treat me well so that I can have an easier time in the palace. Believe it or not, even if I hurt him, abandon him, and I'm a woman who doesn't uphold feminine virtues in the eyes of the world, he would still love me, cherish me. As long as I say I regret it, he can still accept me without any reservations. Duan Wanyi's red lips opened and closed. I watched in a daze and listened in a daze. I believe it. The story's progression seemed to be exactly like this. After Peiheyan was abandoned, he had been depressed, decadent, but the only thing he never gave up was the idea of winning Duan Yi back. I don't know what thoughts were in my heart at this moment. The truth I wanted to uncover was right at the edge of my mind, and with just one more stimulus, I could deduce the real culprit. I didn't seem sad, only a faint weariness. As I turned to leave, a force pushed me into the lake. This kind of drama again. The summer lake water wasn't that bone-chilling, and I knew how to swim. I let myself be submerged and drowned by the lake water. The rouge he gave me that day was very good. I used it for a few days, and it was beautiful. Today, when he lightly caressed my veil in front of the Shangshu mansion's gate, the rouge became a harmful poison. I curved my lips, smiling freely. This is good too. I was even afraid that playing with his feelings would hurt his heart. This mutual exploitation, on the contrary, allowed me to leave without any burden. After I sank to the bottom of the lake, I swam towards the opposite bank. That little palace maid who pushed me probably just wanted to see my pathetic struggle on the water surface, to get revenge for me slapping their master's servant. Peiheyan, she just didn't expect it to be quite different from what she had imagined, and at this moment, she was frantically calling the house guards to save someone. Duan Wanyi was also scared pale. She couldn't let me die, at least, not let Yinzong know that she was the one who killed me. Otherwise, what would Yinzong think? The beauty he snatched away still had lingering affections for her old lover, so she mercilessly killed the woman beside the old lover. The vegetation on the opposite bank was dense. I hid under the bushes, coldly watching the chaos in the lake center pavilion. Once my body recovered, I quickly lowered myself and left the minister's mansion through the side gate. I aimlessly walked to the street market. Along the way, my clothes were already half dry, and wearing a veil didn't seem out of place. In the afternoon, there were many vendors shouting their wares. Girls in the prime of their youth strolled hand in hand, grumbling about the scorching heat. A father in coarse cloth clothes walked past me, happily carrying a child who had been bought a rattle drum. I moved among them like a soulless shell. And when I looked up again, I saw a plaque with the words, Liu Yunji written in golden characters on a blue background. What would Miss like to see? I was stunned for a moment before I spoke. That rouge called, Lianli branch, is it still available? The receptionist's assistant was puzzled. Lianli branch. Miss, our shop doesn't have a rouge by that name, but we have most of the blushes and lip rouges in our shop. You can go take a look. Many wooden cabinets were displayed in the shop, filled with cosmetics for customers to try, and I examined them one by one, only to overturn the guess that was closest to the truth. There were also several areas in the shop partitioned by bead curtains, set up to allow noble official ladies and young women to avoid being disturbed. At this moment, soft discussions were happening in that area. Do you know the most exciting news in the capital today? I know. My uncle went to attend the birthday banquet of the Minister of Rights, Master Duan. And when he returned, he said that Miss Duan, who married out of the Duan family, was incredibly ugly, with the lower half of her face covered in black spots. I wondered why she never came out when invited before she was married, always acting aloof as if she wouldn't associate with us. Turns out she dared not show her face. Charming laughter rang out in unison. Then suddenly, someone said contemptuously, "You still have the nerve to laugh. Miss Duan is like that, yet she still married Prime Minister Pei. I ask you, is your husband as handsome, gentle, or noble in status as he is?" After saying that, she twisted the knife again. And she alone gets to enjoy such an excellent husband. As for those of you whose husbands are mediocre, thick-headed, and have 3 wives and 4 concubines, you really shouldn't laugh. It is only right that she laughs at you. My father also went to the birthday banquet today, and when he returned, he said her poetry responses were incredibly uninhibited, which proves she has her own strengths. How could she not be worthy of that profoundly scheming and insidious Prime Minister? Pei, the originally lively gossip sanctuary, suddenly fell silent. Someone was still muttering, "How can Du Wanyi be so lucky? A husband like Prime Minister Pei is truly impossible to find even with a lantern. This devotee is willing to be a vegetarian for 10 years, to exchange for a future husband like Prime Minister Pei." The shop assistant said there was no rouge named Lian Liji, so it must have been a name Pei Heian came up with offhand. I searched my memory for the color of the rouge while listening to the discussions inside. In the crevice near the corner, I found it. "Miss, please use this rouge with caution." The beaded curtain was just pulled aside, and it was that scornful female voice from earlier. She looked at the item in my hand and said seriously, "Although the color is beautiful, the raw materials used to make it contain frost moon epiphyllum. If it comes into contact with powder like cinnabar, it will counteract it. However, if you truly like it, it is fine. The shop owner will remind you, I just accidentally got some vermilion powder on it after buying it, and it almost scared someone." I put down the box of rouge and powder, and bowed in thanks to the kind lady who had reminded me. "No need to try. The truth is already before my eyes." She laughed heartily. "No need to thank me. Whose young lady are you?" "My name is Chi Huan, the second daughter of Marquis Wei Wu's family. Let's hang out when you're free." "My name is Chu Yi, from an ordinary family, not some young lady." By the time I reached the main gate of the Prime Minister's residence, it was already dark. Before that, I had walked circles around the huge Prime Minister's residence. I knew this place wasn't my destination, but I had nowhere to go, so I could only return to this place. Before I came to this world, I was still thinking of traveling the world. But now I understand that there are floods in the south, barbarians in the north, and Xiongnu. As a young woman who can only tell a few jokes, not to mention whether I have money, going out means being fish on a chopping board. At the Prime Minister's residence, the flowers of the golden rain tree had fallen all over the ground, and a horse galloped past, stirring up the fallen flowers under its hooves. Lord Pai, hearing my clear voice, Pei Heian was so anxious that he dismounted before his horse had even stopped steadily. He was still wet. He must have heard the news and gone into the lake to fish me out. But there was no news of the Prime Minister's wife drowning in the capital. So he helped Duan Wanyi conceal it. His eyelids were bloodshot. His skin was pale from being soaked in water. He rushed to me, grabbed my wrist, and anxiously looked me up and down. "You consort Wan Nyang wanted to see me in a pathetic state struggling in the water. But I can swim, so I was afraid I wouldn't satisfy her. I also worried that after she had someone pull me ashore, she would continue to bully me, so I simply dove into the water and escaped." I made a preemptive complaint. Pei Heian's hand, hanging at his side, repeatedly clenched and unclenched. She is indeed a spoiled and arrogant person. Just spoiled and arrogant. I once thought I understood Pei Heian very well. This kind of self-importance was very condescending. I felt like I came from another world, a world that was too powerful, spanning thousands of years. I even knew the trajectory of their destinies in the first half of their lives, and could examine anyone from an objective perspective. But now, today, as I walked the streets, I found that everyone was vibrant, and Pei Heian was also vibrant. Since they are vibrant, they cannot be one-dimensional. Pei Heian is very complex. He would meticulously plot to drug me, yet also personally go into the lake to retrieve me with a worried expression. If his calculations and schemes were all real, then why were the momentary stirrings of emotion and tension also real? Even now, I don't understand what his objective is. But do I need to know his objective? No. I can only accompany him for half the journey. After this, I no longer have the burden of letting him down. Perhaps I thought my love was too important. In this kind of calculating relationship, mixed with a trace of genuine feeling, All one needs to do is make oneself happy, and fully enjoy his insincere affection. I removed my veil. The dark spots on my face had disappeared, and I said in a muffled voice, "Husband and wife are inherently one. Today I made you suffer because of me." The thing on my face must have been something I accidentally brushed against, and it disappeared after I swam up from the lake. This sentence wasn't an explanation, but rather a statement about husband and wife being one. In the past, I avoided suspicion at all costs, and would absolutely never say such equivocal words. Haiyan's eyes, fixed on mine, stirred slightly, as if he was scrutinizing me. The reason Consort 1 was angry, besides me disgracing myself using her title, was also that she was wary of you and me turning our pretense into reality, wanting to use this to warn me, I thought. I've already paid the price. There is no reason not to claim a little sweetness. Gently raising my head, I continued to speak. That day, you said you didn't believe I didn't understand the sentiment of Phoenix Seek's mate. And you wanted an answer. I looked at the handsome face so close to me, and tentatively kissed the corner of his mouth. This is the answer I'm giving. Lord Pei, his breathing quickened a bit, his eyes deep and fervent, and his throat seemed to be clogged, only managing a low M after a long pause. The night wind blew, scattering the flowers of the soapry tree. The small lantern-like flowers were blown rolling in all directions, as if countless tiny bells were silently ringing, drawing the curtain on this relationship of ours, that was destined to end without fruition. Even after we confirmed our relationship, Pei Heian still treated me the same as before, even copying how I used to avoid him. He was flustered and embarrassed. The way he showed his hand made me want to point at him and have a good laugh. So innocent and so beautiful, if he went to my world, he'd be tricked out of even his underwear. He used me before, so he could feign sincerity, and say ambiguous, misleading words, but at his core, he is reserved and discreet. Without unexpected events, he would follow the rules his whole life, self-restrained and proper, his every word and action reflecting the refined and distinguished manner of a prominent. I had a nasty thought. Was it because Dun Wanyi found him too boring that she chose the unconventional Yinzong? But I am not a woman shaped by this era's conventions. Before I leave, I want Pei Heian to know that some feelings only I can give. For the rest of his life, no matter if he rises to high ranks or falls into the mud, he will never meet someone like me again. So this time, it was me who actively sought him out, neither annoying people nor constantly seeking attention. He once created opportunities to get close by teaching me calligraphy. So I used the boredom of the back residence as an excuse to have him play the zither for me, humming tunes that hadn't yet appeared in this world. It was very new. Everything about me was new to him. I sing very well. Even before graduating from university, I became a well-known internet celebrity by covering ancient-style songs during the rapid development of the internet. I often sing lingering and poignant love songs, and when I get to the ambiguous lyrics, I shift my gaze to him. He always quickly avoids my gaze, making me feel like I'm winking at a blind man. Luckily, his flushed earlobes provided positive reinforcement. Pei Heian likes this. You see, he is just shy. I asked him to paint a portrait of a beautiful woman for me with a brush, and at the same time, I had someone make charcoal pencils for me to draw him lifelike, as a return gift. He only found time to draw one, but I, however, drew no less than dozens of his sketches. His appearance as a gentle young master, with relaxed brows, and a smile playing on his lips when he stood, his serious look when he sat in front of his desk, lost in thought and frowning, his seductive pose with half-closed eyes when he was aroused. It wasn't that the numbers were unequal. I'm simply a lustful stalker. One small sketch was clipped by me into his most frequently used notebook. The ancients spoke of feelings arising, but stopping at propriety, and keeping them in the heart. But I'm not an ancient. I don't care about all that. The man before me is the one who best suits my heart. His hormones attract me, so if I want to kiss, I kiss. If I want to hug, I hug. with sweet whispers and cheesy pick-up lines one after another. It is not like he genuinely dislikes it. At first, Pei Heian really couldn't handle it. His face flushed as he said, "I was like a fox spirit possessed." But later, he gradually accepted it, and even developed a taste for it. Eventually, it was him who got annoyed with me. Such days didn't last long. As winter approached, he was sent by Yin Zong to suppress the displaced people. Southern floods in summer, many houses and crops along the Yellow River were destroyed, and the relief grain and silver distributed by the court for disaster relief were repeatedly embezzled, leaving hardly any grain for the hungry survivors. Winter brought extreme cold. After surviving summer and autumn, the disaster victims could no longer endure winter, and rose up, heading north to other cities to snatch clothes and food. Suppressing displaced people is usually done by military generals, sending Pei Heian, a civil official, to suppress them indeed, shows the emperor's true intentions. He wished nothing more than for Pei Heian to die at the hands of the irrational refugees. But Pei Heian seemed to have gotten used to it. In the past, the late emperor had few heirs. His few princes were all hedonistic wastrels, incapable of great achievements, with only Yin Zong being slightly more outstanding. After he successfully ascended the throne, he discovered that 1/3 of the court's power was in the hands of Pei Heian. Naturally, he couldn't feel at ease without full control of power. For years, the two had secretly opposed each other, but due to the distinction between monarch and minister, it was usually Yin Zong who was wary and difficult, while Pei Heian obeyed and endured. However, Pei Heian himself was not someone who would endure indefinitely. His outwardly gentle demeanor merely masked his inner indifference and coldness. This southward journey was the beginning of his rebellion. Inside the room, warmed by underfloor heating, Pei Heian, carrying the chill of the wind, hugged me from behind. "Fei," I pushed him away. He pressed close again, shaking his head and sighing helplessly, his tone tender. "Fei, just stick close for a bit, and you won't be cold anymore." "Fei for you, yo. I'm leaving tomorrow. I probably won't see you for 10 days to half a month, but I'll try my best to rush back for the New Year's festival. Faith is our first New Year together. Fei Yue is my nickname." Duan Wanyi once proudly said that only close people knew Pei Heian's courtesy name, but even in the days when I was keeping my distance from him, he had already told me his courtesy name, and asked me to address him as such. It is just that the two characters Fu Qing were too easily mistaken for father, and I didn't want him to take advantage. Besides, people here, when addressing close individuals, like to add an "ah" before the name, apart from calling them by their courtesy names. Yan, Huan. To prevent Pei Heian from calling me auntie, I told him my nickname, Yuohu. I always live up to his expectations. Fei, all right. If you come back that day, we can go to General Ju's courtyard to eat sliced rabbit hot pot, and you can also see the surprise I've prepared. Fei, what surprise? Fei, he asked, puzzled. I can't tell you now. So you also, I think those refugees are acting out of desperation. They must have been starving, freezing, and felt hopeless, before desperately heading north to find a glimmer of hope. The bad ones are those corrupt officials. They exploit the common people. They have no conscience. Pei Heian turned me around, his eyes and brows full of gentleness, and pulled out a jade pendant from his sleeve. Okay, your husband understands. This is a token of identity. If you hold this jade pendant, 3 secret guards will constantly protect you. I'm at ease about father's side with mother there. But you, I'm worried about, especially since I heard you've been strolling around the streets lately. Although I no longer restrict you from going out, it is still best to always wear a veil. I took the jade pendant, then tugged at his sleeve dominantly and said, All right, you've said so much. Now it is my turn to speak. He let out a light laugh. You, I've only said 2 sentences. Cough, you speak. I withdrew my gaze contentedly, and said seriously, "General Zhu said your cough illness was caused by being frozen when you were born in Beijing. It is damaged at its root, and it will recur as long as you're stimulated or feel depressed. So, with this trip south, eating and sleeping in the open and the cold weather, you must take good care of your body. I made you some loquat and autumn pear paste. It is sweet, not bitter." I again took out a peace talisman from the brocade box on the dressing table. I heard that the custom here is that when a husband travels far, the women in the family will go to the temple to sincerely pray for a peace talisman. I didn't believe in these things originally, but that day my friend was going, "Here, take it. It is not much use for me to keep it." Pei Haiyan raised an eyebrow in surprise, his slender fingers taking it, his fingertip gently caressing the 2 characters for peace on it, and the corners of his lips lifted silently. "Yu, it is the first time I've received a peace talisman." His tone was tender, and I snorted. "Then keep it well, Lord Pei," he hummed softly, tucking the small talisman into his palm, his eyes trembling slightly. The next moment, my vision darkened, and a soft, moist sensation came from my lips. After Pei Haiyan left, most of the time I stayed indoors, focusing on creative work with Mixu and Neishi. When I was first confined to this courtyard, I had asked them for storybooks. They did collect a pile, but I couldn't pick out a single one I liked. Either they were elopement romances privately written by scholars, under the moon and flowers, or they were supernatural legends, Buddhist scriptures and Zen teachings, and also historical accounts. The first glance I took, I thought I was still preparing for the art stream in my senior year of high school. I didn't much care for reading them, so I started telling stories to Mixu and Neishi myself. Later, it developed into me telling, and them recording. And after the books were completed, they were sold to storytellers under the Sky Bridge, under the pen name Cosmic Standby. Initially, I looked for a few people, but no one dared to take it. In the end, it was a storyteller maiden wearing a millie, a type of veiled hat, who accepted it. The storyteller maiden was skilled in vocal mimicry and used it to make a living. She could vividly imitate the voices of men, women, old and young. But because she was a woman, her breath-fey voice was always not as robust as a man's. So when she narrated tales of Jianggu grievances, she was far less popular than male storytellers. Her first tale, Heaven Sent Lucky Baby, 8 older brothers compete for my affection, completely made her the hottest storyteller in the capital city. Many colleagues asked her which literary club compiled the book, interested in collaborating to tell it together. Unable to make up her mind, she asked Naishui, who had come to deliver the story. Naishui told her about the cooperation plan I had already prepared. I had learnt beforehand that ancient storytellers' income was mainly composed of 2 parts. First, being invited to tea houses and taverns to attract business, where the owner would take a cut from the tea service fee as remuneration. And second, relying on impromptu tips from the audience. That storyteller maiden was not a famous storyteller before this, so there were no invitations from tea houses or taverns. I rented a storytelling building for her. The first floor was free, and anyone could come in to listen to stories. She would stop every time she reached a crucial part, and only listeners who paid Yaojiujiu copper coins could go up to the private rooms on the 2nd floor to continue listening to the story. Generally, going to tea houses and taverns to listen to stories cost 10 copper coins. So going continuously for a month would be 300 copper coins. Yaojiujiu copper coins was clearly more cost-effective. Furthermore, if one directly bought an annual pass, they could also choose 2 story scripts. The storyteller maiden only cooperates with me. In half a year, she, Listening House, and Universe Standby became widely famous in the capital. Many people from other places who came to the capital, besides listening to stories, would also specifically buy a few copies of the storybooks that had been told to take back. Lately, dating Pei Haiyan, my output hasn't been as frequent as before. Besides this, when I have time, I'd also play a few rounds of mahjong with General Zhu, and would be invited by Qi Huan to stroll through restaurants, cosmetic shops. I feel like I'm gradually being assimilated by this world. But as days and nights ceaselessly flowed by, more than half of 2 years had passed, and I constantly reminded myself not to get lost in it. It is already deep winter, with only 2 days left until the spring festival. I haven't heard any news from Pei Yihan's side, so he probably won't be able to make it back. Qi Huan invited me to a restaurant to eat hot pot venison, a specialty of winter. I waited for her in advance in the small alley outside the Prime Minister's residence. Sister Chu, the carriage marked with the Marquis of Valiance's residence emblem rumbled on the blue stone slab. It is too cold. Hurry up and get in. Qi Huan reached out a hand and pulled me up. Even today, I still can't get used to this monstrously strong girl, with a baby face and a fiery temper. Every time I go out with her, I feel like a puppet about to fall apart, being dragged by her. Sister Chu, it would be great if you'd tell me where your home is. Next time I'll stop directly in front of your mansion to wait for you. It is so cold waiting outside for me like this. You'll freeze to death. Let me tell you, I'd be done for if I lived in the Prime Minister's residence. It is fine. I straightened her hairpin that had become crooked from the bumps. My family is of humble origins, so carriages can't pass easily. Qi Huan pouted dejectedly, her fair, tender cheek puffed into a small curve when viewed from the side. All right, actually. My brother was originally going to come along today too, he said. He wanted to thank you for the idea you gave him last time. Many soldiers in his camp no longer suffered from the cold during drills. They even saved a whole wooden box of chilblain medicine. Luckily, halfway there, Mother dragged him off to a blind date with some family's daughter. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so free, Qi Huan exclaimed to herself. I met Qi Su on his way back to the mansion with Qi Huan, and he gave me a ride. Since then, I often saw him personally driving a carriage, picking up and dropping off Qi Huan and me as we wandered around. A while ago, Qi Huan mentioned that this winter was hard to get through. The imperial court had limited supplies for the military camps, and the soldiers were so cold that daily drills couldn't be carried out, which tormented her brother for several days, making him almost bald from thinking. I cursed the dog emperor, who was more black-hearted than a capitalist. Again and then, thinking that they were all warriors defending their homes and country. I told her 2 methods for making warm patches, and asked her to try them out. But Sister Chu, how do you know so much? Knowledge I learned at Duyin University. My eyes flickered, still searching for a kind lie, when a child beggar huddled in the corner, flashed past outside the carriage curtain that I had lifted an inch. Qi Huan, there is a child frozen unconscious outside. I quickly signaled the coachman to stop, got out of the carriage, and jogged over to the snow-covered ruins. This time I saw it more clearly. The boy, who looked to be less than 5 years old, was leaning against the wall, already unconscious, his skin frozen black and purple beneath his tattered inner. It was so pitiful that just one look made you feel a pang of pity. Qi Huan, let's quickly take him to a clinic. I covered him with my cloak, and turned to ask Qi Huan. After all, the carriage belonged to her family, and today, I was also going to meet her. Okay, Sister Chu, I'll carry him into the... As Qi Huan carried the child towards the carriage, a disheveled man came limping around the corner of the alley. He was dressed haphazardly, as if he'd picked up clothes and layered them on, but at least they could keep him warm. Before he even reached us, he shouted, "Kidnappers! Catch the kidnappers!" He tried to grab my clothes with his limping leg but was blocked by the coachman. Is this your child? Qi Huan asked him. No. If he were his child, why would he let him wear so few clothes? Why would he leave him in the snow uncared for? And why would he show such excitement at this moment? The stableman stopped the yelling man, but we still couldn't reach the medical clinic. Qi Huan hesitated and said, Sister Chu, he seems to have no breath left. After that man heard it, his eyes lit up, and he yelled, "Murder!" We were taken to the Grand Court of Revision by the patrolling officers, and it was already half an hour later, after everything was clarified. The coroner examined the body. This poor little beggar lost his breath in the early morning. The old beggar moved him from the dilapidated house to the roadside, hoping to extort kind-hearted passers-by. He just didn't expect Chihuan to be from Marquis Wei Wu's residence, and the officers, fearing authority, wouldn't hastily judge the case. The Grand Court of Revision didn't let us leave on our own. Instead, they notified the Marquis's residence, which means the two of us are now waiting to be bailed out. Chihuan, I've implicated you. I'm sorry. I lowered my eyes, my face still somewhat pale. Behind vermilion gates, wine and meat go to waste. On the road lie bones of those frozen to death. I had recited it quickly in the past, but now the final loop is complete. If reincarnation requires queuing when I can leave this world, I'll plead with the two black and white ghosts to let this poor child reincarnate into a family where they won't suffer hunger or cold, no matter what. I also have connections below. Sister Chu, I've seen many dead people while following my father. I already guessed it as soon as I got out of the carriage, so don't blame yourself. As they spoke, a figure walked in from the entrance hall. Chihuan let out a sigh of relief, her tone lightening. My brother is here. We can go now. Maybe we can still make it for dinner at Qingyan Tower. I nodded, not very enthusiastically. Then, when I looked up again, I was so scared, I nearly reincarnated with that boy. This was definitely not Chisu. That sunny little puppy. It is Pei Heian. Wearing everyday clothes of distant mountain purple, he stood less than 10 steps away, as upright as bamboo and pine, a pair of sparkling amber eyes fixed on me, carrying a hint of imperceptible aggression, a smile he couldn't hide playing on the corners of his mouth. Yu, is this the surprise you mentioned? It was naturally easier for Chancellor Pi to vouch for someone. As we left the main gate of Dali Temple, Chisu just happened to arrive. He saw the three of us walking towards him with big strides, and his first words were, "Miss Chu, you weren't frightened." I wasn't before, but I am now. I looked at Pei Heian. He happened to turn his gaze to me, slightly raised an eyebrow, and his eyes seemed to be asking again, "Surprise?" I'm fine, Chihuan. No need to worry about her. She has been brave since she was little. She'll be fine. Hearing this, Chihuan on the side instantly puffed up her cheeks in anger, glaring at her brother in displeasure. Huan said you originally planned to go to Qingyan Tower for dinner. It is not too late now. After speaking, Chisu seemed as if he had just noticed Pei Heian, giving a theatrical gasp. Is Chancellor Pei coming with us? Of course, civil officials and military generals have historically not gotten along well, especially since I've heard Chihuan say many times that Pei Heian is a sinister and cunning old fox. Presumably, the two families don't respect each other, so I don't know how the four of them ended up in a private room. At the restaurant again, Chisu busied himself for a moment, then handed the deboned fish from his bowl to me. Miss Chu, thank you for the method you told Ah Huan last time. I was originally going to come with Ah Huan today, but something came up at home and delayed us. His fawning manner was like a little dog wagging its tail. I'm done for. Pei Heian paused his hand that was pouring tea and likewise placed the teacup in front of me, the bottom of the cup hitting the table with a pada. Indeed, it is not little General Chi's fault. A blind date is a major life event. It can't be considered a delay. Chisu became anxious and angry because of his words, wanting to explain but having no standing to do so. He could only blush, cup his hands and dryly thank Pei Heian again. Thank you, Chancellor Pei, for bringing my sister and Miss Chu out of Dali Temple. Pei Heian didn't speak. Instead, he leaned to the side and turned his head to ask me. The copper pot is hot. What would you like to put in? On the square table, there were no less than 10 plates of meat. but I didn't recognize most of them. It wasn't that my knowledge was shallow, but rather that if you ate a bite of this meat, you'd be in jail for 10 years. This is venison. This is bear paw. This is... I gave a fawning smile and replied softly in his ear, I think I still prefer you, my darling. Here is a cheesy pickup line for you. Hope you're not angry anymore. The sound of chopsticks dropping suddenly rang out beside my ear. Chisu's smile was a bit forced. Miss Q and Prime Minister Pai, do you know each other? Without waiting for Pei Qian to speak, I nodded first, my voice gentle. I am willing to marry Lord Pei, even as a concubine. Consider what I said as bullshit. When women coax men, they can come up with any nonsense. I'm just talking to him, and in a while, it'll be a cliff. There is not much sincerity involved. This line can both coax him and cut off the enthusiastic little wolfdog's hopes. Chi-Huan spat out the meat she had just put in her mouth in shock. She never expected me to be so immodest. Her eyes seemed to be asking, are you messing with me? If you told me earlier you liked him, would I still be talking bad about him in front of you? You two aren't gossiping about me behind my back, are you? Then she thought again that something was wrong, and blurted out, the Pei family only allows one wife, and Lord Pei already has a family. Fei's hand on the table tightened again and again, and he spoke nervously. Yes, Miss Q. There are plenty of other fish in the sea. My father only had my mother as his wife. If this is what you hope for, I will. I shook my head. I only like him. Feiyan was long accustomed to my glib talk, but those few sweet words didn't make him calm down so easily. After returning to the manor, I dragged him to General Zhu's place to play 3 rounds of mahjong. After returning to the courtyard, I kissed and hugged him, but his gaze was still unfriendly. I knew he indeed had the right to be angry about Fei's matter. After all, I should be considerate that he was a person who had been cheated on, and he is inevitably sensitive about such matters. But after coaxing him this way and that, he still looked like he held a grudge, so I could only act petulantly and give him the cold shoulder. I even, for a moment, spoke inappropriately, blurting out the nonsense that General Qi was younger and cleaner than him. That was the first time I saw Fei's usually gentle and smiling face turn into an ice sculpture, even scarier than the first night he pointed his sword at me. Any surprises, any long-awaited reunion sentiments, all became void. Even the New Year's Day celebration was spent acting in front of General Zhu. I crumpled up the cloud crane handkerchief I had learned to embroider and threw it all into the sandalwood wardrobe where clothes were kept, no longer wanting to give it away. The first spring festival we spent together, we were together in form but separate in heart. In the spring season, the golden rain tree sprouted new shoots, and Pei Haiyan made a trip to the palace to bring Duan Wanyi back. Since the day he went south and returned home, after that intense argument erupted, we were like 2 planets that intersected due to a series of coincidences. And after colliding and sparking, each retreated back to its original orbit. He gradually grew distant from me, preferring to stay in the study to handle affairs rather than coming to spare me a glance. After neither of us took the initiative, we no longer had any interaction, and I could no longer bring myself to say those casual words of love to him. But I could still entertain myself, and also focus my thoughts and energy on the book I was finally going to complete. Until Duan Wanyi's return, I found myself seemingly superfluous, an awkward presence. I went to ask him, pressing my lips together and questioning, what is the meaning of this? He raised his head from the desk. Not having seen him for many days, I noticed he looked a bit thin. Some things aren't as simple as you think. Nor did I intentionally provoke you, I scoffed. Not intentional, then it was deliberate. Pei Haiyan, it is my fault for not recognizing my own identity and status, deluding myself into thinking I held some unique place in your heart, and thus became pampered and arrogant, not knowing what was good for me. What I said that day at the restaurant, about willingly becoming a concubine was nonsense. Your true wife has returned, and I won't shamelessly cling to you. Let's break off our relationship here, and you're just cheap. Not enough cuckolding. You're rushing to be a father. You're the cheapest in the whole world. Chewy. He gritted his teeth and spoke, his eyes flashing with anger. Take back your words. Who said Pei Haiyan wouldn't bat an eye even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him? Always looking like a gentle gentleman. Isn't he getting furious now? I chuckled, softly, murmuring, it is the truth. I can't take it back. When Dune Wanyi came in holding her newborn son, I was holding that pile of manuscripts, ready to leave. Hey Yuan. Ah. Hey Yuan. This has always been Haiyuan, Pei Haiyan and Duan Wanyi's love nest. Only I am the most out-of-place person in this courtyard. In this time and space, Duan Wanyi saw me, raised her red lips, and gracefully walked over. How is it? Didn't I tell you the truth? Her words became sharp, her speech full of vigor. I told you, as long as I want, he can still accept me without any reservations. I calmly retorted, Madam Pei, do you also know how stupid your choice was back then? With such strong aggression all over you, are your days in the palace unhappy? Actually, I didn't need her to say it. This haggard look already explained everything. Besides the fatigue after childbirth, there was also deep disappointment and wariness in Duan Wanyi's eyes. Kings are often cold-hearted, their love wanes as beauty fades. With so many beauties in the harem, who would only dote on one person. She made a wrong move when she didn't control that restless heart of hers back then, but she has a fallback, able to move freely between the imperial palace and the prime minister's mansion. She is a beauty fought over by others. Her pallor is only temporary. Unlike me, I can only ask General Zhu to find me a new residence to spend this last year. Luckily, there are still good people in the world. If General Zhu has to avoid suspicion later, and can't take me in, I'll take Mixu and Nakeshu to find the storyteller maiden. We'll still manage to live comfortably. The new courtyard is next to General Zhu's courtyard. It is definitely not as good as the crane ritual courtyard, but it is quite nice. Anyway, the guest rooms can't compare to the master bedroom. As soon as I moved in, I found a snow-white cat curled up in the courtyard. Sishihao! Mishi exclaimed in surprise. Is it called Sishihao? I asked, puzzled. Naishi smiled and said, No madam. All tabby cats with uniform color are called Sishihao. It must have been living in this unoccupied courtyard all along. I didn't expect it to grow so plump and graceful, even without being fed. It is not even afraid when we approach it. Fat cat, Jirsha, fat cat. I scratched its chin. It really wasn't afraid of people at all. Let's keep it. Okay? I looked at Mixu and Naishi with a pitiful expression. This still needs their agreement. In a year at most, I'll become a hands-off boss, and the cat's happiness for the rest of its life will still be in their hands. After careful consideration, I named Sishihao Yidianian. I also made a cat teaser myself, and every day I lived a carefree and leisurely life. General Zhu strongly opposed Duan Wanyi's return from the beginning, and later, he simply stopped asking about it. Qihuan frequently sent letters to the Prime Minister's residence, asking about my identity. Since Duan Wanyi had returned, I had nothing to hide, so I simply informed them briefly. Her second letter informed me that her brother wanted to marry me, which scared me so much that I quickly wrote a letter of refusal in a messy handwriting. Spring quietly faded away, and Yidianian got fatter again. After visiting General Zhu's courtyard a few times, I sensed an impending storm. However, major events like the rise and fall of noble dynasties are like a revolving lantern in the sky, while common folk can only guard their own bean oil lamps under their eaves. As I picked up the last book I had written, preparing to go to the listening library, I happened to run into Pei Haiyan, in front of the Prime Minister's residence, his clothes stained with fresh blood. How long has it been since I last saw him? I don't remember. I just feel like it hasn't been too long or too short. He had lost more weight, and the gentle grace of a young master from a noble family had completely vanished, leaving only ruthlessness and coldness. Where are you going? I didn't expect to run into him, and honestly replied, I'm going out for a bit. You're not allowed to go. He said something to the guard beside him, then strode towards me, dragging me all the way back to the Prime Minister's residence. Finally, he pushed me into a hidden woodshed and locked it, locking me up again. The woodshed was dim, with only a wooden window, smaller than a sheet of Schwan paper, for ventilation. Pei-Heian, let me out! I looked around the surroundings again, my tone becoming even more pitiful. It is too dark. Can we switch to a different place to lock me up? Please, I beg you. I really get scared in small and dark rooms. Seeing him look at me as if his blood had turned cold, I could only pound on the window and shout, Mikshay. The two of them came from the palace. Before he could finish, he turned and left. Pei-Heian? What did you do to them? So what if they came from the palace? They didn't do anything bad. Pei-Heian, I won't forgive you. I will never forgive you again. With tears streaming down, I turned and curled myself into a ball. I'm so angry. This man-eating feudal society is too terrifying. I want to go home. You can go home now. Hearing the sound, I lifted my head from my arms and witnessed the most horrifying scene of my life. Two ghosts with pale faces and long tongues hanging down were leaning in, looking at me with worried expressions. Can't the civil servants below pay attention to their image? The approval has passed, and your body has recovered. You will return to your timeline exactly 1 second before you collapsed. If there is something in the room, I'm not that scared. I retorted, isn't it 2 years? There is still half a year left. One of the ghosts, please believe in the efficiency of our underworld office. Okay, but sis, what have you been up to in this world? How come the main storyline progression accelerated so much? And the side storyline progression is also all messed up. Didn't do anything. Just fell in love. Alright, this is none of our business anymore. Wait, can it be postponed for another week? I want to say goodbye to my friends. Pei-Heian was deliberately scaring me. I asked those two civil servants, Mikshu and Naishi are doing great, and still have a long lifespan. Madam. Two worried female voices reached the small woodshed, and I quickly got up. Are you two all right? They shook their heads and came closer. Just now, someone in the manor gave us our deeds of sale, and also kicked us out of the manor. Now, it seems there are heavy troops guarding all around the Prime Minister's residence. The two of us were worried about you, remembering there was a dog hole, so we squeezed in. Excellent, as expected from those who came from the palace, able to adapt to any situation. Through the wooden window, I handed that book to Naishui, instructing. This is the last book prepared for the storyteller lady. You tell her to start telling stories today, for free. The deed for that storytelling building is written in both of your names. You two will be the masters of that storytelling building from now on. I choked for a moment, thinking that I would never see them again, feeling inexplicably sad. So many books you've copied for me. You can definitely find a way to make a living through the storytelling tower. And all the money I earned, you can all split it. I also wrote a few letters to Miss Chi's family, but didn't send them out. They're in the drawer of my dressing table. Naishi, you go deliver the books first. Mikshu, help me figure out how to open this woodshed lock. They saw the urgency of the situation and didn't ask too many questions. The lock was made of iron, and a woman's strength couldn't open it at all. In a moment of anxiety, Little Bit, who I didn't know when it followed, pawed at a thin iron wire that had fallen on the ground. Jazzy hair, Mikshu knew how to pick locks. She picked up the thin iron wire and opened the woodshed door in a few tries. I hurried all the way to General Zhu's courtyard. On the day Pei Heian raised an uprising and fought for power in the main storyline, his mother drank a cup of poisoned wine given by a spy. The main storyline is half a year ahead, so that means today. In the courtyard, Zhu Ling was once again dressed in the fiery red riding attire she wore back then, and a wet nurse held a sandalwood tray with a wine goblet in her hand. I rushed forward and knocked it over. The wine spilled all over the ground. Chu Yi, why are you here? Fu Qing isn't. I quickly pulled out the silver hairpin from my head, dipped it into the spilled wine on the ground, and the silver hairpin turned black. It is poisoned. Who? I unexpectedly hugged General Zhu, my eyes moist, stopping her anger. General Zhu, I've been very happy playing mahjong with you these past few days. You look more beautiful in your riding attire than in any makeup I've ever put on you. Undercurrents surged in the imperial court, and every day, many officials silently took sides behind Pei Heian and Yin Zong. Although Yin Zong was the emperor, he did not fully grasp power. Over the years, he had been tyrannical and arbitrary, with no interest in governing, only thinking about how to reclaim power from Prime Minister Pei, and was mediocre and incompetent in governing the country. As for Prime Minister Pei, ever since the late emperor allowed him to temporarily wield 1/3 of the power, even under Yin Zong's pressure and provocations, he could still maintain balance and turn the tide of affairs. It is just that, the reputation for usurping the throne doesn't sound very good. The atmosphere in the capital was tense, and everyone felt insecure. Marquis Wu actively sided with Prime Minister Pei. In addition, news about the emperor snatching Fei spread from a small storytelling house. The story was told subtly, but among those who came to listen, there were many sharp-minded nobles from marquis families who could make the connection with a little thought. Although Jun Wanyi didn't often attend banquets before her marriage, those with a keen eye would still remember her beautiful face. The year before last, she attended palace banquets multiple times. After the new year, there was an imperial concubine in the palace, who resembled the prime minister's wife. Most of the audience at Tingshu Tower are women. They still vividly remember how Prime Minister Pei loved and protected his wife at a birthday banquet a year ago. That woman was ugly enough to blind people. Now that they think about it, she wasn't the real Juan Wanyi at all. It was most likely the emperor's malicious humiliation, but Prime Minister Pei still did his best to protect her. For such a gentle person to endure even when humiliated to this extent, his character is evident. If a woman commits a mistake because a man treats her badly, people might still understand. But this Juan Wanyi just abandoned Prime Minister Pei, who did nothing wrong, and threw herself into the emperor's arms like that. It truly is an unadulterated case of a wife cheating on her husband, fickle and disloyal. Everyone couldn't help but despise her. Even more unexpectedly, the monarch of a country would so disregard moral principles and ethics, indulging in debauchery and acting without principle. Who says Prime Minister Pei has a wolf's ambition? If he were so humiliated and showed no reaction, just swallowing his anger, that would truly make him a 1,000-year-old tortoise. When the monarch lacks virtue, the people's hearts are hard to sway. The power of public opinion was constantly shaking the people's hearts. In the south, some common people had even begun to invoke the mandate of heaven, seeking a change of monarch. In the 32nd year of Yude, Yinzong was deposed and imprisoned in the dungeon. This palace coup was not very intense. The powerful minister, Prime Minister Pei, supported the less than 1-year-old prince to ascend the throne, then became regent and controlled the court. From afar, on the city tower, I watched the enthronement ceremony. Pei, holding the child emperor, stepped onto the pinnacle of power. His purple python robe and jade belt lightly fastened, his eyebrows and eyes gentle, yet his pupils gleamed like a cold blade after tempering, his robes fluttering with each step, overshadowing the kneeling officials below the jade steps. I thought Pei Heian would ascend the throne himself. I propped my elbows on the gaps of the city wall railing, cradling my chin in my palm, mumbling to myself, but this is good too. At least there are fewer slanders. For someone like him, who is still considered a man of integrity, it's better for historical records to dedicate more ink to his achievements and scholarly demeanor. Hey. So, the subsequent developments you didn't let me know about. Did Pei Heian also seize the world? A reply came from the empty space beside me. Yes, I nodded. Pei Heian was indeed more suited to be the winner. Yinzong was promiscuous and pleasure-seeking, disregarding the lives of the common people, while he was heartless, rational, self-disciplined, and principled. More suitable than Yinzong to be a ruler, without personal affections. If under his governance, there could be fewer corrupt officials embezzling disaster relief funds, and fewer children dying silently on snowy nights, then he indeed should overthrow this imperial power. He gave me poisonous cosmetics, making me make a fool of myself in public, thereby establishing an image of enduring humiliation, bearing heavy burdens, and possessing a benevolent and virtuous heart. Even without the book I wrote later, he could still leverage people's sympathy to denounce and attack the sacredness of imperial power, pulling the majesty of the Son of Heaven down from its altar. Ascending to the throne is certainly good, but the eternal infamy of usurpation is inevitable. So he unreservedly brought back the abandoned Duanwanyi, along with the newborn prince, to use them as pawns, allowing himself to sit behind the scenes and become the true power holder, manipulating the puppet emperor. Prime Minister Pei. Oh, Prime Minister Pei. As the male lead vying for supremacy over the world, he indeed possesses a ruthless and intelligent heart beneath a gentle exterior. The story ends here. He and I both got what we wanted. The relationship between people is generally about each getting what they need, having gotten it, having had it, leaves no regrets. All right, I've seen them all. Take me back. I left the city wall railing, walking towards the shadowed area nearby, where two ghosts were. You, where are you going? A voice like shattering cold jade softly echoed from behind me, with a hint of ghostly anger in its tone. Terrifying, even more terrifying than the ghosts before. You said proper goodbyes to everyone else, gifting silver, land deeds, hugs, talking through the night, drinking and chatting happily. But me, you only glanced at from afar, isn't that right? I shivered nervously, turning around to meet his gaze. Prime Minister Pei, I haven't forgiven you. Why would I talk happily with you all night, drinking and chatting merrily? He reached out his icy hand and clasped mine tightly, fingers intertwined, as if that way I couldn't escape. It is my fault. From now on, I'll have plenty of time to explain to you. How do you want to punish me so you can forgive me? I'll take you back to think about it slowly. There was genuine seriousness in his eyes, as if everything could still be turned around if I named a punishment. But he was deceiving himself. I didn't believe Pei Heian wouldn't suspect a minor concubine from the cold palace would know so many strange and wondrous things. I didn't explicitly say anything, but I also didn't deliberately hide my abilities. We had a tacit understanding. Perhaps he hadn't imagined I would still leave. At this moment, he was somewhat flustered, his gaze fixed on me, his thin lips pressed tightly together. You have time, but I don't have time anymore. I smiled and stroked his cheek, my tone gentle. At least most of our time together was beautiful and happy, wasn't it? There was no melodramatic jumping off the city wall, no white moonlight, no choosing between two, no shielding from knives, no blocking arrows, no running away with a child, no poisoning. I felt that Bodhisattva had already blessed me. When you look back on these past few years, it won't be entirely filled with humiliation, endurance, scheming, and betrayal, but rather a strange person, as beautiful as a celestial fairy descended into your world, and then strangely left. The two words, leave, stimulated his nerves. He froze for a moment, the veins on his forehead protruding, his shoulders trembling slightly, as if he was trying hard to control his emotions. Yet he deliberately bowed his head and lowered his ear towards me, appearing exceptionally humble. Chu Yi, I forbid you to leave. Don't leave. Don't be like this. My heart ached as I touched his forehead. My tone relaxed. Maybe we'll meet again. For example, at an archaeological site. Why? The moment he opened his mouth, his voice was hoarse. His amber pupils deepened a few shades, and his reddened eyelashes drooped as if in thought. First, that young general from the Qi family tried to snatch you away from me, and now you insist on leaving me. I only distanced myself from you, enduring my longing to protect you, afraid that others would know you're my weakness. Now no one can stop us from loving each other. Yin Zong and Zhuan Wanye have been locked up by me, and Qi Su will soon transfer him away from the capital. Do I have to lock you up so you won't leave? He gripped my hand even tighter, seemingly calculating the feasibility. But that way I'll be scared. And I'll be scared of you too. I seriously refused. In the tense silence between us, I traced my fingertip behind his ear, and a white thread-like light vanished through his skin, and the stubbornly surging desire in his eyes gradually calmed down, and his tightly clenched hand slowly lost its grip. He was rapidly losing his memories of me. Pei Heian. I'm home. You must be well. Extra story. On Pei Heian, I lost a segment of my memory. It was about everything concerning a certain person, but I still clearly retained my feelings for her. That kind of feeling seemed to be hate. Hate her for what? In the imperial court, I could make clouds with one hand and rain with the other. Yet, when it came to remembering her, I was helpless. Even with bitter medicine, silver needles gleaming with cold light, or even absurdly strange rituals, I felt like I was going crazy. Mother also advised me not to be so fixated. I feel like I've heard that line somewhere, in the middle of the night. When dreams returned, a playful voice with a hint of pity would faintly drift over, saying, Lord Pei, why entangle yourself in 1,000 knots for a mere passerby? Kick away those you cannot keep. Tormenting yourself is the worst strategy. But every time I woke up, I forgot everything completely. I knew Mother was lying. She herself was clearly missing that non-existent person she spoke of all the time, missing her so much that she would sigh at a strange concoction of a smoothie and wipe wooden blocks inscribed with words every day. They all said at night, I always woke up once to check if the person beside me had their blanket properly covered. But the space beside me was empty. Where was any person beside me? Tucked into my usual sketchbook was a portrait of me. I asked the most skilled painter in the palace to identify the style, and he said he'd never seen such a technique. He even asked who I was, and if I could introduce him to the artist. I didn't agree. I also want to know who she is, using extravagantly opulent brushstrokes to depict my expression when I was emotional. The imperial physician said it was a heart ailment and told me to rest for a period of time, play the zither daily to calm my mind and recuperate. Yet, unfamiliar melodies always played in my head, interweaving together, as if a faint, clear, soft, and gentle female voice from across 1,000 mountains and rivers was singing nearby. The story is vivid, but our fate is too shallow. My head was splitting. From then on, I never touched a zither or flute again. At 30, I had reached middle age. Everyone praised me as a refined gentleman with the talent to govern the world, but I knew clearly that I had nothing. My body and mind were both shackled by the one I loved and hated the most. No longer able to feel anything in the world, one of my strategists saw me as withered as a dead tree and recommended I go to the best storytelling house in the capital. He said he would go there to relax when he was in a bad mood, as the stories there were different from the usual, especially the ones that first went viral. You didn't need to ponder their philosophy or criticize the characters. The shopkeepers there were two women, who looked surprised and a little flustered when they saw me. As I was leaving, one of them presented a manuscript. The title was scrawled crooked. The crane is a fierce beast, capable of fighting eagles. The manuscript described an event that occurred before I unified the world. To humiliate me, the deposed emperor took my then-wife into his harem. Ordinary storytellers in tea-houses often recount historical anecdotes and palace rumors, but I inexplicably felt this book was wrong. It was missing something. Missing the most crucial part. The year I turned 40-something, my mother passed away peacefully. Among her burial items, I found an old scroll painting. As I slowly unrolled it, it was a painting of a beauty drawn by my own hand. In the painting, a technique known only to me was used. A small section between the sleeves, instead of an iris pattern, had exquisitely delicate characters. I had written my dearest, my love. An inexpressible, suffocating pain washed over me. I clutched the scroll, gazing at the person in it. She was looking back at me, as if across decades of time, and my tears fell like rain. So, it wasn't hatred, but resentment and grievance born of love unfulfilled. I still hadn't remembered her, yet I could piece her together. All these years of discomfort, in reality, were the slow torture of longing. Extra story 2. Are you sure he'll lose all memories of me? Absolutely. What comes from the underworld is always top-notch. There won't be any side effects, right? He is going to serve the country and the people in the future. Don't let him turn into an idiot. Hearing my concerns, the ghost fell silent for a moment. Probably not. This thing acts on the soul. It won't affect his brain. But the side effects might need observation. After all, he is the first one to use it. Huh? But don't worry, the chances are very small, even if there are any. Everything after that won't concern you. The next instant, I felt as if I was rescued from drowning, gasping for air, with constantly scrolling comments before my eyes. My nose stung, and my eyes welled up. What is wrong, baby? Are you feeling Wow, the streamer looks so beautiful when she is upset. Let's establish this broken, melancholic beauty persona from now on. I love to watch it. You can't criticize this. She is too beautiful. Seeing her makes a scumbag go crazy, and a straight woman miss her period. She is simply the bane of depression, and a wake-up call for vegetative patience. Is the streamer still singing? The streamer seems a bit strange, huh? Why is she suddenly so sad when she was fine? Is she really feeling unwell? I pulled out a tissue and wiped my tears. Sorry everyone. I'm feeling a bit unwell, so I'm ending the stream now. Pressing the end button, I leaned back in my chair and sighed deeply. It really feels like a dream after that live stream. I went offline for a while. Some experiences need time to process, and I gave myself plenty of time. One day, 2 months later, I was lying on the sofa, letting the TV lull me to sleep. Intermittent news broadcasts reached my ears. We are now interrupting with a major archaeological discovery. This afternoon, at a construction site in the northern part of Luoyang City, an unexpectedly well-preserved and grand ancient tomb was discovered. According to preliminary assessment by archaeological experts, this tomb dates back 10 Wu Bai years. Its specifications are close to that of an imperial mausoleum, and the tomb owner's identity is very likely that of an eminent official who controlled the government and held immense power at the time. My closed eyelids twitched. No way it is such a coincidence. What is unusual is that, unlike previous tombs, with numerous gold, silver, and jade burial artifacts, this tomb owner's coffin only contained a few charcoal drawings and a silk handkerchief embroidered with clouds and cranes. Unfortunately, the paper fibers are severely decomposed and difficult to restore. Experts then deciphered the epitaph, and we learned the tomb owner's surname is Pei. All right, next, let's connect with our on-site reporter to take us for a closer look at this mysterious powerful official's tomb from 1,000 years ago. Maybe the signal was bad. It took a man in a white shirt and mask, with a refined and tall physique, appeared on TV. His gaze calmly fixed on the camera, All right, I'm on-site reporter, he yan. And next up the voice that came scared me, making my hair stand on end. Anything he said turned into a ringing in my ears. So similar, his voice is like him, his figure is like him, and even those amber eyes exposed outside the mask are remarkably like him. But that is impossible, isn't it? It must be a coincidence. I comforted myself and turned off the TV. The next day, I still felt a little uneasy, like a crazy person, scared yet with some inexplicable expectation. So I simply drove to my parents' house to stay for a few days. While waiting for the elevator, a series of footsteps came from behind me. I slightly tilted my head, and in my peripheral vision, it would be impolite to look any further up. I withdrew my gaze, but my nose vaguely caught a scent of cold fragrance. So familiar, yet I couldn't recall where I had smelled it before. Maybe I bought this perfume before. Right, however, this is the first time I've seen a neighbor on this floor. I used to think I was the only resident on this floor. The elevator went ding. The door slowly opened. I walked in and turned around. The neighbor who had the same face as Pei Haiyan thus appeared before my eyes. He then walked into the elevator, a faint smile on his lips, his tone gentle. You, how have you been?